Welcome, everybody. I'd like to call to order a Town of Superior Board of Trustees meeting at Superior Metropolitan District Number 1 Board of Directors, Superior McCaslin Interchange Metropolitan District Board of Directors, Superior Urban Renewal Authority Board of Commissioners, the Superior Metropolitan District Number 2 and 3 Board of Directors meeting for September 22nd, 2014. Phyllis, if you'd call the roll.
Sure. Mayor Andrew Muckle.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Joe Cirelli.
Here.
Trustees Elia Gregores.
Here.
Chris Hansen.
Here.
Sandy Pennington.
Here.
Lisa Skumatz.
Here.
Deborah Williams.
Here.
Town Manager Matt Magny.
Here.
Town Attorney Kendra Carberry.
Here.
Town Clerk Phyllis Harden.
Thanks. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda unless there's any changes. Trustee Williams, second by Trustee Pennington. All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much. I saw your thumb going up, so I counted. With that brings us to 4 reports, questions, and issues. Trustee Hansen, you want to start?
Yep, not much to report. I did attend a ProStack meeting last Wednesday, and we did start reviewing a little bit of a presentation of the community outreach for the indoor space needs. But as discussed earlier, there's really, it's premature to go into any kind of depth in that. They're still tabulating it. Good discussion nonetheless, and that's it.
Great. Trustee Cirelli.
Well, I've been away a while. Lots of pasta, lots of wine, and nothing to report.
Do you want to show home movies or anything?
That's a good report.
Okay. Trustee Skumatz.
I think just one thing to report. I had a coffee buzz, and one of the residents that came was concerned about road conditions and wondered when on our cycle was Colton and Rock Creek near Safeway. They think it's turned into rather a roller coaster, and I didn't know where. I couldn't answer them where that shows up. They also thought Colton generally was a little bit weak and wavy.
Yeah. So we will do some patching this year on Colton for some of the bad spots. And then Rock Creek Parkway, we'll do a portion of that next year. But further out, I'd have to follow up with you. So
Thanks.
do that.
Nothing from me. Trustee Williams.
There was a Dr. Cog meeting, but I fell asleep before I could make it because I was in Italy and had horrible jet lag. So happy to report there really was nothing interesting or worthy to note for Superior for Dr. Cog. I also have 2 things I wanted to, on the traffic side. The traffic at Campus Drive and 88th Street, if you're heading to Monarch High School every morning, it backs up all the way past the roundabout. But on the other side, there's not hardly any backup. And so we often go all the way around and come from the Louisville side in order to get to school on time. And we've been doing this for, well, as long as school has started. So I think there's something wrong with the light and how it is timing, or how the timing is set up so that Superior residents can get into Monarch K through 8. So if we can look at that.
And actually, Alex contacted the City of Louisville staff, and they did go out and look at the intersection. I will look for the response, and I'll forward it on to you.
You know, what's interesting about that is they're all turning right, so you would think it'd be easier, like, you know, the traffic would be flowing, but it's not.
Well,
No,
they
there's
put
a
a sign that says,
It says no
Do not
right turn.
Oh, that's why then. Okay.
Are you referring to attending Monarch High School or Monarch K-8?
Monarch High School.
Okay, I thought I heard you say Monarch K-8.
No.
Yeah. And what time does that start?
So
7.
Monarch starts at 7:30, so you have to be on that road by 6:45 in order to get to school on time. If you leave at 7 and you're on that road, you get to school at 7:30.
Wow.
It's
Half an hour to go.
I've never seen it like this, ever, and we've been going there for 4 years. And I know there's somebody in the audience that feels the exact same way that I do.
So this is new this year?
Something is different. I don't know what. The timing of the light, who knows?
There was always, but not back that far back.
No, not that far
You
back.
get maybe over the bridge and maybe down by the light, the
This is-
pedestrian, but now it goes all the way back, so to...
Yes, so something's different, could we look into that? Because I'm generating traffic on the Louisville side now, just so that I can get my kids to school.
Okay.
Or they can get themselves to school. Either way, same thing.
The other thing that's happening right now is people will drive to a Vista and then come down through a Vista so they can drive into Campus Drive.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
They used to monitor for that and give tickets.
that's right. They're not doing that right now, but I didn't, that's not that beneficial.
Okay.
Trustee Gr- Oh, was there?
One more thing,
Yep.
and then we'll move on. And it's come to my attention, and we've talked about this numerous times, that when buses, the school buses stop, and they put out their little stop sign, cars go around,
Really?
and it's unlawful. They can be
Who
ticketed.
does that?
I don't know. People do that. And so, once again, it appears to be a big issue in the community just lately, as school started, that motorists are not obeying those signs. I don't know what we have to do about that. Maybe we can talk about it in the TSC, the Transportation and Safety Committee meeting, and just kind of touch on it.
And maybe invite the sheriffs to come to our
Well,
meeting.
that's a great idea.
Enforcement's the best way, so.
Yeah.
It is.
Talk to Sergeant Chair.
Well,
Put
could
a
we,
GoPro, go
Do you have-
GoPro on the stop sign so they can take a picture of the people driving by.
Because bus drivers can report that. to
Yes, they
us.
can.
They should.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
All right.
Okay. Trustee Gregorius.
Just a question, maybe, Matt, you can elaborate for those that are watching, and especially for residents of the original town. So we now have a functioning second exit in case of floods, and it's working, and it's,
So, with the property that the town recently purchased, the Shan property, which is in south original town, south of the creek, adjacent to McCaslin Boulevard, you take the old rail bed up to that property, that had a driveway, which we've improved, and so it's gated, but in an emergency, the sheriff's department or fire department would open those gates and people could use that to get out onto McCaslin.
and do you think like if we had
That part of it.
a good rainstorm, like no trucks would get stuck going up there, they would be?
No, because we've put down asphalt millings and compacted them down so that it's a water, won't affect it.
So I guess that's one promise that the board had and town staff had to the citizens of original town that we have fulfilled, and I think it's been a long time coming, and I'm delighted to see that before we have a next weather event.
Definitely.
So, thank you for doing that and making it a priority.
Trustee Pennington.
I read with great interest the green space calculation that Lisa had asked for. However, I would like to have the opportunity to meet with staff about how it was done, because it included the 11 acres of the school parcel in the green space calculation for south of Colton.
Yeah, can easily be removed.
Is that irrigated, though?
Huh?
Is that irrigated?
No.
It presumed it was a
Presume
park.
it would be
I mean, it's in the budget to be a park, so we included it.
So what I wanted to do is call that to people's attention, because if you do the calculation without it, the number falls from 1,400 square foot per household to 1,050 square foot per household of green space south of Colton. So it was fully disclosed on the thing, but I would like a line added that says without the park included what it would be, which I believe it fell to 1,050. And then I had a couple of other questions to ask about regarding that, because this included 108 units for Calmonte as single-family south of Colton, when in fact there are only like 8 built out right now. So I just wanted to go over some of that. I think it's a good exercise, but I just want to make sure we know all the variables we're including or not including. So that's the only thing. But I thought it was a great exercise. I read the minutes about the third-party independent engineer for the town center, and the discussion was, will the one that's paid for by the builder, by the developer, be independent, or should we have our own? And I did want to hark back to the conversation we had during the PD approval process of that exact same subject. And we had this exact same discussion. And now, I was a little disappointed to find out that now we feel like we have to hire our own for that third-party independence. So I just wanted to, it might be useful to go back to that tape and watch it, because at that time, when those concerns were raised, the assurance was given that independence could be had, even though the check for the salary was coming from the developer. So, you know, I think it's worth reviewing that and possibly saving the town expense. Of course, if we don't feel that's any longer the case, then we have to go through the town expense. But anyway, that's that. Saw we have another fall shredded program hosted by Guardian Storage, but my question on it was, last time you had to fit everything through that little 3/8-inch slit. And is that what this one's going to be like, or will it be, can I take a bag of stuff and just take the whole bag?
It'll be the same. Yeah, I don't know if the committee's talked about having a truck come by for one day, as we've done in the past, but...
That would be good.
But,
I think that would be good.
I don't know if the
Well
committee's talked
advertised.
about that or not, so...
Well advertised
Yeah.
for the day. Yes.
I would appreciate that if we can do that.
I did
think-
not expect to have to do things item by item, and I was there for half a day. I'm doing my
That's no
bags, item by item.
That's no good.
I asked her to unlock it, but she couldn't, because guess what? She doesn't have the key.
Right, yeah.
So she can keep it all secret. So, anyway, that would be useful. I wanted to thank staff for putting up on West Torrey's Peak a no parking sign with an arrow from here to the curb, because El Dorado K8 traffic has gotten so weird that people are now lining up on West Torrey's Peak, but they're doing it straight to the stop sign, and thereby
Yeah.
causing a traffic
They need to stay
a
back from
safety
the
hazard.
intersection
So
anyways.
that
yeah.
has been very useful. That's all.
And can I make a note?
Trustee Schoenmetz and then Trustee
Okay,
Williams.
sorry.
So, partly, something that Trustee Williams said reminded me of one other item I wanted to raise, and it's a discussion item, maybe? Do we have, I don't know what other people thought about this weekend, but what is with Jeffco Airport? And is there
It's so
something
loud.
that can be done?
Yes.
Did we suddenly end up in a flight path, or what?
Well,
Out of
for
control this
a
weekend.
few months,
Overnight it was, yeah.
Yeah.
for a few months, NASA was having its air pollution testing going on. But I'll check with, we can check with the airport and see if they have any new,
Well, they were successful
Studies
there.
or
There was a lot of
operations.
air pollution. They were very successful when they did this.
They were really low, really loud. It was bad. And so can you at least like investigate whether there's anything we can do to complain and talk about finding a different flight path or something?
I think those were military jets that were.
Were they? I have no idea. They were
They are
super loud.
periodically.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sorry.
it sounded like they were
Yeah.
going to be
It was
landed.
right on my roof, yeah.
yeah.
Okay, sorry.
My comment, I had the same concerns with the third-party engineer, and I just want to make sure that we're going to talk about that in the budget discussion, because that's where I was.
Items that we're going to highlight, yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Town manager.
Nothing of real significance. The Hodgson Harris Dam's moving along, should be completed this year still, so. It actually looks like a dam again.
This year, Matt, or
Yeah.
this month?
year. I don't
That
know
was
if
supposed to
it
be
was this
completed
month
by
or-
September.
They did some reclamation work, so they must be pretty close.
Yeah, yeah, so, I thought it was October, but.
Okay.
And then the street project, you know, the leaves are starting to fall, so my staff's working hard to get that wrapped up before we get any snow, so that was it.
Very good. Thanks. Town Attorney.
I went ahead and filed a motion to dismiss the Randall appeal today with the Court of Appeals. They have the ability to sanction him for 20% of the cost of the judgment, so we asked for that. I've never seen this happen in the Court of Appeals before, so.
The court never heard anything from them?
No, he never filed his opening brief.
Okay.
Do you think this saga will go into another decade, or?
I hope not.
No?
So we'll, like I said, we filed it today. We'll see what the Court of Appeals does with it.
Town Clerk.
Nothing.
And candidates forum is?
Tomorrow night at 7 o'clock.
Okay. Very good. Thanks. That brings us to item number 5, public comment on consent agenda and non-agenda items. And we have a special guest that maybe we could put at the beginning of the public comment period,
Audrey?
which would be Mr. Burrows. Yes, thank you.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor and Board of Trustees. I appreciate the opportunity to come before you this evening. My name is Audrey DeBarros, and I'm the Executive Director of 36 Commuting Solutions. Our address is 287 Century Circle in Louisville. And we work closely with the U.S. 36 Mayors and Commissioners Coalition to advocate for major transportation investments to the U.S. 36 corridor. I'm here this evening to inform you about a new program coinciding with the U.S. 36 Express Lanes project, and to encourage you to pass this information along to Superior residents and employees. And I've provided a handout for you this evening. With the backing of the Colorado Department of Transportation, RTD, and the Denver Regional Council of Governments, we have secured funding to launch a congestion mitigation program to coincide with the remaining 1.5 years of the construction project. We know traveling US 36 is a real burden right now. It's stressful. There's changes happening all the time on a regular basis, and there's traffic delays. The Curb Your Frustration campaign will reduce traffic congestion by providing new incentives to encourage carpooling, vanpooling, and riding RTD. By completing a simple application and a commute survey, participants can receive a $45 RTD 10-ride ticket book or a $75 one-time subsidy for carpooling and vanpooling. A very innovative part of this program is piloting master eco-passes for employers and employees around, located within a quarter mile of the McCaslin, Broomfield, and Westminster Center park and rides. We estimate there are 1,300 employees located between the Superior and Louisville, McCaslin area who are eligible for this program. The comparable value of an eco-pass is the same as purchasing a regional pass annually, about $2,100 per person. The eco-pass is an unlimited use annual RTD bus pass that can be used on any RTD service in the entire Denver region, except for special rides like the Broncos rides. Surveys have found that people who have an eco-pass are 7 times more likely to ride RTD compared to those who don't have one. The McCaslin eco-pass program is a really special opportunity to cultivate this transit culture with businesses and employees in the Superior Marketplace area at a time when the corridor really needs traffic reduction the most. Thank you for this opportunity to speak this evening.
Thank you. How can we help you with this effort?
We are working with the town staff to put information in your newsletter, on your website. We have submitted a banner permit to place a large banner on the fence in front of Town Hall. We participated in Superior Chili Fest to raise awareness for that event. So any outreach opportunities, and with your canvassing in the community, if you could spread awareness, we would greatly appreciate it.
Very good. Thanks. Questions from the board? Thank you for all your excellent work on this. So we all appreciate it. So thank you.
Nice to see you.
All right. Additional public comments.
Good evening, Michelle Horton, 3341 West Torrey's Peak Drive here in Superior. I just wanted to thank Trustee Williams for bringing up the issue with regards to the bus. I wasn't planning on saying anything about it tonight because I just didn't know if it was going to come up, but there had been quite a string. So basically what is happening at several of the high school bus stops is that people are just going by and the bus driver is honking at them, but I think everybody feels that there's no kind of way to enforce it. So one of the issues I've noticed with regards to the traffic behind El Dorado is everybody performs great if the cops around, but they don't if there's not. So I think looking forward from the town side, it'd be nice to see if there was some more creative ideas, such as placing cameras on the buses to help enforce it, or other things that we can do, because people decide they can make U-turns whenever they want, even in the school crosswalks. People decide if the stop sign is something they want to adhere to that particular time. It's pretty brutal. And I think enforcing is obviously a good thing, but unfortunately, it's not going to change the behavior because they're only good if the cop is there. So just thank you for looking into that and looking forward to seeing some changes.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Additional public comment? Okay. Not seeing any, then let's move to presentations. And tonight we have some additional special guests, and we'll start out with our state representative, Diane Primavera. Thank you so much for coming. And Mr. Megley, do you have any introduction you want to give?
No, I just want to thank her for coming down and speaking to the board. I'll hand those out for you.
Welcome, and thank you for coming.
Thank you, and thank you for your service to Superior as well. As you know, House District 33 encompasses all of Superior, the Boulder County side of Erie and Broomfield. And I've served in the State House for 6 years, and this will be my final run for this House seat. And it's been really an honor to serve this community. The priorities that we had last legislative session were jobs in the economy, supporting our public education system, and economic security for senior citizens. That's been a big issue. So I don't know if you heard the latest report from Natalie Mullis today, but again, we got a good economic forecast for the upcoming year. So we're really pleased that some of the legislation that we've been able to work on has had a positive impact on the economy. Education, even though we weren't able to reduce the entire negative factor it has been labeled, and that we had to take cuts in education during the 2008 session, we were able to get more per pupil funding into the public school system, and I know you'll probably hear more from your Boulder Valley School District people tonight. As I've walked precincts each day since May 10th, I've heard a lot from the citizens that I represent. There's still quite a concern for jobs and the economy. If you have a job and things are going well, it's not a concern, but if you're in that percentage that still is unemployed, it's quite stressful. I've also heard in feedback, both positive and negative, about the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, and that I think needs to continue to be tweaked to make it work for people in our community so that they can have affordable health care. I sit on the Legislative Oversight Committee for the Health Exchange, and we'll actually be meeting this week to talk about, just to get an update on how the exchange is working. In this area, transportation is an issue, as you probably know. RTD more than anything. People are very tired of paying into paying their taxes and getting really nothing in terms of RTD service out here. I especially hear it from the Anthem area of Broomfield, where a lot of the seniors reside, and feel like they really could use some public transportation. And not so much in Superior, but I hear a lot of pros and cons about fracking and concerns about that. As I've walked Superior, I think Trustee Skumatz mentioned airport. I hear a lot of feedback from residents about the noise from the airport, so I'm sure you've heard that as well. So next year, should I get elected again, I hope to focus on health care. I was lucky and honored to be appointed by Speaker Ferrandino to chair the Health and Human Services Committee these past 2 years. I've also been elected by both Democrats and Republicans to be the chair of the Legislative Audit Committee. I'm not the chair right now, but I serve on the Audit Committee. That committee has been really important to me because as a single mom, I've worked 2 and 3 jobs to raise both my children. One's an attorney now, and one's a nurse at Anschutz Medical Campus. So I'm hoping to continue on the Legislative Audit Committee should I get reelected again next year, and also to continue on the Health Committee. It was actually 26 years ago yesterday, but nobody's counting. Probably Mayor and Dr. Muckle understand how important some of these dates are, but that was the date I was diagnosed with cancer and told I wouldn't live 5 years, and those are dates that are always etched in your memory. And so I was lucky enough to survive the illness, and it's been one of my priorities at the Capitol as well to make sure that anybody that's diagnosed with cancer can survive, and as I've been lucky to do. So that's pretty much it. I'd be happy to take any questions if you have any.
Great, thanks. Thanks again for your service. Questions from the board?
So what do you have planned for the upcoming session? Is there any specific laws that you're working on or specific issues?
Well, for the next 44 days, I'll be concentrating on getting elected.
I get that.
This is always one of the top 2 targets in the state for House races, so I always have to work really hard just to maintain my seat. I assume I will, we've had some pretty horrendous audits recently that I've heard in the audit committee, and we need to do a lot of work to make some of the programs and departments run more efficiently in the state government so that people get what they deserve out of the programs and taxpayers' money is spent wisely. So I assume I'll have some legislation coming out of the audit committee. Since I have been chair of health, I've been working on an obesity caucus for the last year. Childhood obesity is getting to be a huge problem in the state of Colorado, costing us billions of dollars ultimately in healthcare costs with diabetes. And we've even had people from the military come and testify that the biggest issue right now for getting into the military is lack of physical fitness. So I'll probably work on some obesity legislation. I've also been working on with a cancer coalition to try and work on some of the gaps in the Affordable Care Act for people who have been diagnosed with cancer. So those are some of the things I've been working on.
Worthy causes, definitely.
Other questions from the board?
Good luck on your campaign and good luck on your re-election.
All right, thank you.
I'm very
much.
optimistic.
I hope so. Fingers crossed.
And
Thank you.
Diane, I don't think there's anybody who visits our community more than you do. I see you around, I have you knocking on my door, and I really appreciate it.
And the open houses that she's had
And the
have
open
been great.
houses as well.
And if residents have questions or concerns for you, what's the best contact?
There's a phone number on the back of here, and there's also my website, www.dianeprimavera.com. You can contact me through that. But I'm a Colorado native, and, my dad always said, Colorado's the best, of any state in the nation. And then I always tell people that when you're from Superior, Colorado, that's the creme de la creme.
Best of the best,
So,
yeah.
Anyway, thank you.
All right, thank you so much. And then tonight, we also have Jen Bedford, our Superior Elementary School principal. Thank you so much for coming down.
Thank you very much, Mayor Muckle and trustees. Thank you for having me here this evening. I wanted to take the opportunity to come in and share the good news and update you on our Indiana improvements, and now that school is back and running, how that's working for us. I want to thank your time that I know you spent a lot of nights talking about and really mulling over what was going to be best for the community. And I know I worked with Dave and Alex. Thank you very much for their help. And so far, it's gone very well. The cutouts are working quite nice in terms of being able to drop kids off in the morning and pick them up. We are going to be putting some signage up there so that it does specifically state it's for drop-off and only at certain times in the morning, and then they can park during the school hours. So that should help with some of the, I would say, systems that get put in place. A big, huge piece, though, is that sidewalk that has come from the pool parking lot that's connected. That was a huge traffic concern and safety for us. We see a lot more of our families using that pool to access that walkway now that we've got a safe walkway right there. So I know that was a huge question, not sure which way to go, but a lot of our families have said thank you very much for the sidewalk. And so thank you all very much for taking the time and the thought that went into making those decisions. It's been a huge success for us. So thank you very much. And the bump in the middle of Indiana, also very new. I think it really does slow the traffic down because it's got a median in the middle of it. So it does make you really stop to pay attention to the traffic right there, which is our major crosswalk there on Indiana in front of the school. So I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for coming down. Thank you for your work at the schools. Questions from the board?
Just a real quick comment that Jen's also had her staff park in a different area on the school premises. And when you go there now, it's parking is abundant there, and it is really good with the cutouts and the parking, so it's
Thank you.
a nice partnership we have.
We do, and as I'm sure Mr. Hanson, Trustee Hanson can attest to, we've had lots of conversations around our parking congestion and traffic at drop-off and pickup and what would be best and safest for our students, and that's really what we're aiming for. And so, yes, we have tried to clear out that parking lot and ask our staff to park a little bit further away, which has opened up parking for our families there to drop off and pick up.
Trustee Skumatz.
And I think the pickup and drop-off has moved a little bit also onto El Dorado, which I think spreads it out. I'm noticing a lot of parking there, so.
Yes, yes.
Being
So,
used.
thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for coming down.
Absolutely.
Great. That brings us to the consent agenda, and tonight on the consent agenda is approval of the minutes of the September 8, 2014 Board of Trustees meeting and acceptance of the meeting notes with the Recycling and Conservation Advisory Committee. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Trustee Skumatz, second by Trustee Williams. Discussion? All in favor? Very good. That's unanimous. Brings us to 8, presentation by Boulder Valley School District and adoption of a resolution in support of Boulder Valley School District ballot measure 3A on the November 4th, 2014 general election ballot. Mr. Magley.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight we have Dr. Bruce Messenger, who's the superintendent for Boulder Valley School District, as well as Dr. Deidre Pilch, who's the deputy superintendent, and we have one of the board members with us tonight, and it's Lori Albright. She's the president of the school board, and they're here to present on their upcoming ballot.
And Briggs is just watching, apparently.
And Briggs is Briggs in the corner. Yeah, Briggs is here too. But they're here to present to the board about the ballot issue they have coming up on their facilities and master plan, and answer any questions of the board.
Great. Thanks so much for coming down.
Good evening, Mayor Muckle, member trustees. We are thrilled to be here. I am Bruce Messenger, Superintendent of Boulder Valley School District, Deirdre Pilch, and our president of our board, Lori Albright. We're going to tag team this a little bit, and we understand that we're to keep it brief, and we'll honor that. And if there are questions at the end, we'd be thrilled to answer those. So, again, we appreciate the opportunity to stand before you and share our story. As was noted in the introduction, on the November election of this year, there is a bond that comes before the voters in the Boulder Valley School District. In the amount of the bond is $576 million. So our purpose tonight is to tell you a little bit about how we got here and what will be a part of this package going forward. In 2006, Boulder Valley School District taxpayers approved a $296 million bond, and that was built out over the course of 6 years. And good work, very good work occurred as a result of that. We initiated almost 2 years ago a process under the guidance of our Board of Education suggesting that we do a thorough analysis of needs throughout the district. So we formed a committee, the Capital Improvement Planning Committee, over 30 members of our community, parents, non-parents, business owners, engineers, lots of good folks, and they worked many hours working with our staff to look at all 55 of our schools and other sites to determine what needs exist in those buildings. And so we identified over $800 million worth of needs just because of the age and the condition of our buildings, and we didn't come asking for that. So we went through a process and looked at multiple packages. And ultimately, the one the Board of Education under Lori's leadership decided in August was a $576 million package, so a facility master plan we refer to that as, and then the accompanying resolution for the upcoming election. So we've been busy getting out and about and sharing information about this bond issue, and so I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Pilch, and she'll give you some highlights.
Thank you. Good evening. So we're excited about improvements to every one of our buildings in the Boulder Valley School District. We serve 9 municipalities, and every one of those communities will see dramatic improvements to their buildings. About 50% of this work is simply improvements to HVAC, plumbing, electrical finishes, work that we were not able to do as a result of the 2006 bond. So that's a big part of this bond issue, is just really maintenance and improvements that are long overdue. 70% of our buildings are over 30 years old, so you can imagine the kind of upkeep that comes with that. We're also excited about improvements that we're calling improvements to innovation and instructional technology. And what this is every school will have the ability to access innovation dollars and increase innovation in teaching and learning for students and staff. And so we're excited about that. We also are planning for 4 new buildings. A new school in Erie, because we have dramatic growth in the Erie community, and we don't have space for those children in the schools that they would currently be slated to attend. And then 3 rebuilds, and these are 3 elementary schools that are in significant disrepair, and after our architects and engineers fully evaluated them, it was determined that we'd be better off to rebuild those 3 schools rather than try to improve them. And those schools are Douglas Elementary, Creekside Elementary, and Emerald Elementary in Broomfield. And then finally, we want to improve the operational functionality of the district. And by this, just a couple of pieces on this, we plan to improve and expand our services to students with special education needs, as well as our early childhood needs in the district. So with this, we will have space in every school or community for early childhood education, as well as full-day kindergarten. We currently only have full-day kindergarten space in 8 of our schools. This would give us facilities to have full-day kindergarten in every school in the district, which we believe is an important part of the work that we do in preparing students for their world. So I'm going to pass it back to Dr. Messenger.
So one of the things that I didn't mention before, and you may know this, but I'll just reinforce this, is that in the state of Colorado, the state legislature supports public education. We continue to encourage them to support it all the more. But what they don't do is invest in capital construction. So the way school districts do building improvements in our state, and there is no match for that, is through bond issue initiatives, which we're working on right now. And so, anyway, and in recent years, as you know, like most public services, public education has struggled to secure adequate resources in the general fund. So some of the fix and repair that Deirdre described are in part a product of being underfunded in the general fund for years. So some of the things we might normally do in maintenance, we haven't been able to do. One of the things that we did in preparation for this campaign was to do some polling. Bob Drake took lead on that for us. He's done this work for us over years, so scientific polling. And so the good news is that we have a high favorability rating as a school district. Folks like their Boulder Valley School District, which we appreciate. Over 73% rated the district as positive or good or excellent. And then we went back in the same survey and asked questions about, so what would you think about increasing your property taxes? And for these kinds of things. So in the polling, we asked them to look at packages and what would be included in those packages and the impact it would have on their property taxes and how favorable they were to that. So that was a part of our data collection. And what we found is there was strong support for a bond issue, like what we're proposing, and actually the amount we're proposing was also polled very high, over 63%. And one of the areas that polled over 80% positive was the investment that this bond would make in repairing the facilities, maintaining the facilities, because they see that as we do as an asset, just like your public buildings as well and your public property. So we think that is part of the reason that there's high favorability for us to go forward with this. And so we enjoy and appreciate the partnership we have with you and with the town of Superior, and Jen's report that she gave, and as I've had opportunity over the years I've been in the district, so we work with 9 different communities, and so we're thrilled that Superior is one of them. And so we see this as a great partnership, and we appreciate your support of the public schools. And I think Lori would like to address you now, and I think she has a request to make.
Great, thanks.
Lori Albright.
Thank you very much for letting us come today and talk about what's really important to us, which is our schools. So I can tell you that the school board voted unanimously in early August to put this measure on the ballot, and because it's really clear to us as elected members of our community, and I represent this community, that it's really important to us that we have really solid buildings and that they're as good as they can be for our kids and for our educators. And so tonight, I mean, you've heard what will be in it. It was a pretty quick run-through about what's in $576 million worth of a bond. There's a lot more detail on both the Boulder Valley website as well as our campaign website, which is yeson3a.org, if you'd like to look at it. But I'm here tonight to ask for your support and your endorsement of a resolution in support of this measure. It's really important to us that we have our other elected officials be in support with us, and that the voters know where we stand. So that's what I'm here to do. So we'd like your yes vote. I would also ask for your individual support. We have a page on the campaign website, again, yeson3a.org, where you could put your own name in as someone who is supportive of this measure. I've got yard signs out in the car if you want, if you want any. But we could go on and on, I think, talking about both the campaign but about the measure. But thank you very much for the chance to come speak with you tonight, and we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you for your time and service, and questions from the board. Trustee
Thank you.
Skumatz.
So I have, as a resident of Superior, and a question I think that the Superior residents will want to know is, what do you plan for our buildings? But also, I think we could probably get a lot of support for helping Erie out by giving them the pods we have in return for the building here.
Well, so I just want to reinforce, so I'll answer the question, but what Lori mentioned is that on our district website, just right on the front page, if you go, there's Facility Master Plan, Educational Facility Master Plan. If you click on that, it's nearly an 80-page document. So every school, there's some intro, but every school is listed there. So all the Superior schools and all the schools in the district can be found there. One of the things specific to the schools in Superior is that as a result of this work, all of the modular buildings or portable buildings will be removed. And so they're not just in Superior, but throughout the district. That in part is about good educational learning places. I mean, they're adequate, but not great, and we know that. And so they always last longer than we plan. And so where there's need for the space, then new construction of classrooms will occur. In some places, there isn't need for that space. The enrollment has gone down, so we'll just right-size back in the building. The other issue around this is security. There's $8 million in this package around securing our facilities, entrances to the facilities, and that's just really difficult to do with modular buildings. I mean, I think our staff does a great job. We've got good communication systems, but at the end of the day, that's really not where we want the children to be around security. So that all the modular buildings throughout the district will be removed from the campuses.
Thank you.
I think that was your question.
Well, that was along with what specifically, but you've given us a place to refer,
so
because you can't remember what exactly.
And I think in your packet, Matt, I think
Yes.
included is some detail about each of the Superior schools. So I know you've got a big packet. So your electronic packet, I think those are in there. That might, okay?
Trustee Hanson, then Trustee Williams.
So a couple of questions. What is the time frame, if this were to pass, what is the time frame that we would see finished results with our three schools, Monarch, El Dorado, and Superior Elementary?
Do you want to just talk about the phase construction plans?
So we have not yet built the actual timeline, but we know that we plan to build this out over the next 6 years, which is an ambitious project. But once it passes, our plan would be to get that timeline built. It's also our hope that a student wouldn't go through their education going from one building to the next through construction. So, for example, in your community, we wouldn't want them, Superior to be first, then El Dorado, then Monarch High School, and have the students in construction each year they're in school.
Okay. And then the second part of that question is, if it takes 6 years, I'm sure you're aware of our town center that's going in, and there's a parcel there allocated for preschool. In your information here, under program compatibility, you have provide adequate space for preschool.
Yes.
So if that's going to go in the schools, and we've got here in town center, how do those live together?
Okay. Well, thanks for the question. We abbreviated our presentation tonight, but we were hoping the questions would get us to the parts we went over. So there's two parts to this. One is that we are committed as a part of this facility master plan in the bond is that every school would be able to host the classroom space for full-day kindergarten. And we do not have full-day kindergarten in all of our buildings now. We only have in 8 of our 30. So not every building would have the capacity, the space to do that, because it takes twice as many rooms because of the full day. So that would be on every campus. Okay. Now, the preschool, our commitment through this is that we could either place the preschools on the campus, and we've done that. So Monarch K-8 has preschool on the campus, but we don't have. We have 19 preschool on campuses. So what we'll do is look at what is the best solution. We also have an early childhood center at Mapleton in North Boulder, and we don't have a preschool on Whittier, which is a neighborhood school, because partly that campus is so small. So we will evaluate. The money is there to either put it on the school campuses or take that money and invest it in a center. So we'll do that as a part of working with the community and just see what is the best option for Superior. Would they prefer to have an early childhood center and children come into that location, or would they rather have it on their own campuses? Then we need to figure out how that space would be used. But we understand that's not a firm decision today, but the resources would be there to do the construction on either combination of those, not both probably, but either combination. And that wouldn't be just in Superior we'd have that conversation. We'll probably have it in Lafayette and some other places. There are some advantages to having a center. There's some advantages to having the preschool children on the campus as well, and we're doing both right now. So we will certainly look at that following the bond election. Okay?
Thank you, Trustee Williams.
And that was exactly my question, because I wanted to find out how you were going to supply adequate space for the full-day kindergarten, because I know both schools don't have preschool there.
Right. So we'll just look at each campus and do a site of analysis, and we'll work with the community. There's some advantages, like I said, either way.
But I'm assuming that probably these two schools may need additions built.
Yeah. So Superior Elementary, because of the declining enrollment in that area, so we've been making our way to being able to fit in the building over recent years. And so we'll do that analysis, and then we'll look at the full-day kindergarten, and then we'll also look at the preschool. So we'll look at those combination, whereas El Dorado, we probably will do additions in the Aspen Creeks or other KE building we're doing that with as well in Broomfield. So.
And I think there's one thing that you could make this pass, and it's saying that you're going to be getting rid of all the portables.
Yeah.
That is right there. That isn't enough to make it pass.
All right, well, thanks for that word of support. We think it's important as well. We agree.
I've got the bumper sticker, no more pods, vote yes on 3A.
We hear you.
So do you have an idea about when full-day kindergarten would be rolled out? Presumably it's based upon classroom space, but...
It's actually two dimensions this. I again appreciate that question. So in the state of Colorado, unfortunately, we don't, the legislature hasn't had the resources to fund full-day kindergarten. So any school district that has full-day kindergarten, including our own in some of our buildings, is because we're taking revenue from other areas and investing it there. So if you're a first grader, you generate 1.0 funding as a full-time student. If you're a kindergartner, it's 0.58. And so we'll continue to work with our legislature to get that up to 1.0 for kindergarten. Our cost to add the staff to do full-day kindergarten in these spaces is a little over $4 million. So we're going to continue to work with the legislature. Our hope is that when we do this build-out phase, that the legislature has the resources, we'll work on it again in this session, to get to full-time kindergarten. If not, then the burden will be back on us locally to work with our taxpayers and with our communities to see how we can get there. There's a strong commitment to get there. What we know is today, if the legislature or this session decided to fully fund kindergarten, we don't have space to house them in our buildings. So this is under our control right now, is to work to create the space, and we'll continue to work to try to secure the funding for full-day kindergarten. But it's important that this is for buildings, and that we need to still secure money for resources for additional preschool and kindergarten.
So just so I understand this, so my other question related to this was the operations, and within your budget, do you think you have the ability to fund full-day kindergarten throughout the district if you didn't get the additional funding through the state, or that would be another ask?
So, presently, we do not have the resources. It hasn't been prioritized as a resource that we would free up that $4 million from existing revenue. And so, again, we'll continue to work with the legislature to try to get that full funding, or it could be at some point another ask that we'd come back on would be more of a mill levy question as opposed to a bond. But our hope is that we are able to secure. We've had strong support in the legislature. They just, they've got their priorities as well. And we've had strong advocates from the Boulder County area advocating for full-day kindergarten, and so we're still hopeful. But the operations beyond the teaching staff, we're confident we'll be fine with this. Erie is the only place where our footprint's really going to get bigger because it's a new school. The replacement schools actually will probably operate more efficiently than our present schools. We didn't talk about sustainability, but we actually anticipate a reduction in overall energy cost as a result of this bond issue, because many of the aging systems will be replaced with more efficient, just like at home. And so that will free up general fund dollars that we're paying for electricity and gas that will either help pay operational costs. So we're feeling good about the operational aspect, but the expansion of the kindergarten would take additional resources.
Okay. And then in terms of long-term capital maintenance, we get periodically, ever since I've lived here, we get requests to support capital construction projects, and because of deferred maintenance or whatever, how often do you anticipate that will be citizens will be asked to fund long-term capital maintenance because of deferred maintenance?
Go ahead.
We'll see what it commits to.
You know, when they get hard, I always like to see if Lori and Deirdre want to take them. Well, so it's a great question, and it's a worry for us, and it's a worry for school districts throughout the state, and probably cities and municipal governments as well. Because of the tight public funding over the last really 2 decades in public education, what has happened is the money that's been set aside in Boulder Valley and most every school district in the state has just gradually been dedicated more and more to instructional services. And so we spend over 92% of our general fund dollars for people, which we're in the people business. That makes sense. Unfortunately, those aren't maintenance people as much as they ought to be. And so we have this accumulating deterioration and aging facilities. And so if you've been watching what's been going on in school districts the last handful of years, they've had bond issues after bond issues, and really, if you read in the detail, they're doing just exactly what we're doing. Sometimes it's new buildings, but a lot of times it's fix and repair or replacement buildings. We continue to work with the legislature to try to get dedicated, secured funding that we could have a percentage that would go annually for maintenance so that we wouldn't accumulate these ongoing responsibilities. Our hope would be, after this bond issue and success working with the legislature, so we can get an ongoing maintenance fund, that the next time we're back here doing this, that we'll be talking about other innovations and other improvements in the school, and that when we won't have to talk to you about boilers and roofs and sidewalks, because we've been able to take care of that and on our ongoing maintenance. What we know is we need to catch up in a big way. $235 million of this $576 million, so almost half, is for this fix and repair, and obviously 3 schools just completely replaced. And so we've got some catching up to do. But then going forward, if we could get 3 to 5%, 3%, 3.5% of our ongoing general fund dedicated to maintenance once we catch up, then we wouldn't have to dedicate bond funds to do that, and the payback obviously be a lot quicker.
Great, thanks for that question. Trustee Hanson.
So,
I would just say one more thing about that, when you have new buildings, there's not quite as much maintenance. 70% of our buildings are over the age of 35 years old. And so they were built at a time when the standards weren't that high. So you do have more deferred maintenance with really old buildings. So with newer buildings, I mean, there are maintenance needs, of course, but they're less. Mm-hmm. And so I think there would be fewer requests. I mean, you can't make a promise to that, but that's our hope.
Okay, great. Trustee Hanson.
You know that most of the kids from Superior attend Monarch High School when they go to high school. And is there any chance, moving forward, that we have a great high school football team there, that we could have a home stadium where our high school football team could play at home? And I know that the Louisville board would like the same thing. Yeah. And is there any chance of that happening?
So what we know from our voters is that our big athletic stadiums do not poll well, and they don't bring the votes out for yes, and there's actually a lot of opposition to that in Boulder Valley. What we do plan to do at Monarch High School is make some dramatic improvements to what exists there. So we'll at least be able to bring more of our events home, but varsity football will not be able to come to Monarch High School. But we do plan to make significant improvement at the Centaurus campus where Monarch currently plays, with an attempt to neutralize that stadium more so it doesn't look like Warrior Stadium, Centaurus Stadium, but really make it a shared stadium. We intend to do the same thing at Boulder High School for the stadium that Fairview and Boulder share. So there's some pretty significant improvements in here around athletics and fitness and health. Walking trails, tracks, replacement of tracks, replacement of the synthetic fields, and increasing synthetic fields at some of our middle schools, as well as then again, those improvements to the existing stadiums to really get them up to standard and up to a place that doesn't feel like Monarch High School is going away, but they're going to a centralized stadium to play that they also, have ownership in. We know it's a big issue. Yeah.
Trustee Skumatz.
So at the beginning, you mentioned what the big asks or the big categories were, and you just said about half of it is the repairs and maintenance to existing facilities. It looks like the innovation's about 2%.
Yeah, it's a little over $20 million for the innovation fund.
And so what's the other big chunk? The other sort of almost half or third or something?
So the security was over $8 million. So there should be, I think the executive summary is in your packet as well. There's one page.
But they're not hearing it. The voters aren't hearing it. So
okay, so on our website also there's a table that gives those. So some of the centralized services that Deirdre mentioned about a new transportation hub or facility, again, an aging, deteriorating facility. We have 3 regional kitchens, and they will become one centralized kitchen. We prepare all the food now in 3 regional kitchens, and so we'll prepare that in the central area, and also improvements on the education campus where our offices are located for around professional development and training. And then Deirdre mentioned a centralized special education facility for our students who have very unique needs, and some of those are now being contracted out of the district. That's about 10%, a little under 10%, so a little over $50 million for all of those projects in combination. And then if you have a chance to look at the buildings, so our high schools are almost $20 million apiece of improvements on those buildings. Again, depending on the age of the building a little bit and what work was done in '06. And so I think so what we call is Facilities Condition Assessment, FCA. So those are going in, and again, Columbine and Casey, our 2 newest buildings, don't have much in that category. But some of our aging facilities, not those that we're replacing, but some of those that are older, as a percentage of the whole are higher. So you'll see that most of that money goes into each of the buildings individually, and it really just depends on, all the work that needs to be done. Our older schools, almost all the restrooms need to be replaced. They're not accessible. They're not particularly friendly and very welcoming to our students or to our staff. So it's really like if you were remodeling an older home. I mean, that's really, and so if you look at each page by page, I think that you'll see how that adds up. Deirdre, do you want to add?
Well, I would just add one other thing, and this is kind of the air quality and health and comfort in our buildings. So because our systems are so old, we don't do a very good job of being able to bring in cool air at night and then keep the buildings cool during the day. So significant improvements to our HVAC systems to allow us to better cool our buildings that are not air conditioned and to have healthier air in the buildings. And then adding air conditioning at 8 schools in our highest poverty communities so that we can extend the school year for our children who are living in poverty, who we know just need more time and more education in order to catch up.
Other questions? Just one from me to end with is that we will presumably have some interest in a joint facilities agreement regarding athletic fields. I assume that you're open to that if we were to discuss that in the future.
Absolutely.
We have those with each of the communities that we work with over time, and we refine them from time to time, so absolutely. Our students use the city parks, and our playgrounds and campuses become city parks in the after hours and the weekends, and our buildings get used a lot, which we love. And so, so we do see this as an investment for our preschools through 12th grade students. Obviously, that's what we do all the time. But we also know that our schools, our campuses serve a lot of our communities, our other adults and younger children, and we like to just keep wearing them out so we can keep working on them, because that means the tax dollars are invested in facilities that make a difference for children, adults, and our communities. So again, we really appreciate the partnership with Superior and appreciate the time this evening and your great questions.
Great. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you for your service, and good luck to you on the campaign.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Trustee Cirilli?
I'd like to make a motion
Yes.
that we approve Town of Superior Resolution Number
48.
R48, Series 2014, a resolution of, whoops, lost it. A resolution.
Do you want me to read it? The Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior in Colorado in support of Boulder Valley School District ballot measure 3A on the November 4th, 2014 general election ballot. Is that the one?
Yes, that is exactly the one.
Okay. There's a motion by Trustee Cirilli. Is there a second? Trustee Hansen? Is there discussion? All in favor? Unanimous? Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you. That brings us to 9, which is the presentation by the Parks, Recreation, Open Space, and Trails Advisory Committee.
Is that power?
Mr. Magley.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like Patrick Hammer, Director of Parks, Recreation, and Open Space, to come up and introduce this item.
This is weird. I thought this was the subcontract. I have an 8 and I have a 10. I don't know.
9, they should be.
It was the second, sorry.
It's the second packet.
Another one.
Second packet.
Second packet.
It's item 9.
It's 35, page 35.
I have the second packet.
I am at page 35, but, okay.
Page 35.
Oh, okay.
Good evening, Patrick Ebert, town staff. I have with me tonight Chris Cares with RC Associates, Chris Trapinski from Green Play. Also have Brent Bickel, Chair of ProStack. Also in the back, we have Sandy Hammerly and Peter Bottomley, also with ProStack. As you know, we've been going through a process reaching out to the community specific to indoor needs and desires for space in Superior. Tonight, we're just going to touch on some key points that we've started to get back from the survey. It's a lengthy survey. We're getting a ton of information back. We really wanted to kind of key in on the indoor space specifically for tonight's conversation and just identifying that need. We've prepared a handful of slides just to kind of highlight where we are in the process. And then I also like to point out that as staff continues to work with Chris Cares and ProStack, we're going through really the massive information that's in this survey as it relates to all the other questions, library, specific uses within the facility. So tonight's focus really is just on identifying that need for indoor. And ProStack was able to see this on Wednesday, and we would like to just share that with you guys this evening. So with that, Chris Cares. Thank you, Patrick.
Is this? Can we advance it? So as Patrick said, we did have the opportunity to talk about some of these slides at the ProStack meeting last week. And I'll remind you that this entire process has been one that's been highly participatory in terms of ProStack, the staff, and you as trustees helping to give input that helped to guide the survey that was fielded. It's also important to acknowledge that this is not a referendum. This is not a vote. The purpose of this survey was a planning tool, and it was a complicated survey with a number of different dimensions to it. And by design, it was intended to allow you and us working with you to probe very deeply into community input. So keep that in mind as we talk about findings. I'll remind you that the method for the survey involved a postcard with a single password on it that was sent to all known addresses in Superior. We then did a follow-up postcard to non-responding households. So some households received 2 postcards, some received 1 if they participated early on. There was also an opportunity for households to call in and indicate that they didn't have the capacity to complete the survey online, and in that case, we made arrangements for them to get a paper version of the survey. So those were tabulated along with the online versions. The survey, some of the language in the survey was designed to look at opinions related to the household. So when there was a single password, that individual responding to the survey was often asked to speak in terms of their entire household. And that's been an important part of the analysis so far, but that will continue to be important as we go forward and do further analysis of the results. And then I'll finally mention that the town, I think, did a good job of encouraging participation as we went along with several email blasts and a variety of different devices that were used to try to encourage participation. So we mailed to 4,734 households. We had 221 surveys that came back undeliverable, and we've shared those addresses with town staff. This resulted in about a 13% response rate, or 600 completed surveys. For a sample size of 600, at the 95% confidence interval, the responses are generally plus or minus about 4%. So I think that's not necessarily the focus tonight, the statistical part of it, but I think it's important to keep in mind that there is a statistical basis and that this was a random sample. One of the questions in the survey read, considering all of your nearby options, in or near Superior, how well do you think the following services and facilities currently meet the needs of your household? So keywords were inner, near, superior, currently meeting the needs of your household. And this was asked on a 1 to 5 scale. 4s and 5s were in this case, we've identified those as mostly or completely meeting needs, and the 1s and 2s were that the needs were not at all or not very much met. So the dark blue lines here are indicative of households, percent of households that responded that needs were being met. And what you see is a rank ordering, needs being very well met for parks, natural open space, trails, little less but still quite well met for the outdoor aquatic facilities, outdoor field facilities, and the dog park. So roughly 3/4 of the respondents were saying that needs were being met there. And then as we go further down the list, outdoor court facilities, about 65% met, library, 39%, meeting facilities, 32%, indoor aquatic facilities, 26%, and indoor recreation facilities, 25%. So part of the idea here was to get a rank ordering of community input, and also to have the ability to probe these responses by gender, by age, by length of time in the community, by neighborhood. So those are the kinds of additional analyses that are taking place. A follow-up to that question read, which 3 types of facilities should be the highest priorities to add or improve in Superior in order to better meet the needs of your household? So here keywords were highest priorities, 3, and in Superior. And when we added those responses together, highest identified was indoor recreation facilities, followed by indoor aquatic facilities, the library, trails, and so on. So again, providing a general rank ordering of the highest identified priorities. Now, one of the later questions in the survey was one that said, if you had $100 to allocate to priorities, how would you allocate them? So this last question was asked very early in the survey, and then the question asking people to allocate the dollars was asked near the end of the survey. And what these 2 lines show is the response patterns across those questions at the on this same series of facilities or priorities. And I think the point that we have made to staff and made to ProStack is how consistent these results are. The rank ordering is really identical across both of those questions, and you can see how the lines parallel. The only exception would be natural open space was given $8.88, and meeting facilities were given $5.17%. So those were flipped in terms of priority. But the overall priorities are consistent, and I think as we go forward thinking about it, it in our minds reconfirms the importance of the indoor recreation facilities. Now, later in the survey, there were a whole series of questions that probed in quite a bit of detail priorities for those indoor facilities, and that information will be shared with the community at a later date. Question was also asked about the preferred location for an indoor facility. And the choices, as you can see across the bottom, no strong preference wherever it's determined best to be best, strongly prefer in town center area, strongly prefer the Rock Creek area, another location, or a mix among the neighborhoods. And you can see a clear prioritization there with the no strong preference wherever it is determined to be best at the top. And so I think that provides an indication that the community sentiment really has not predetermined the best location, and are open to the kind of process that we're involved in now and that you're going to be going through. Again, we have the ability to look at this by neighborhood, so we're able to say if a household did not live in the Rock Creek area, for example, what did they say in terms of priorities? And you can see on the strongly prefer Rock Creek, the north and south of Colton, so there was some breakdown on that question. And then there was a question that asked about the potential indoor facilities in partnership with Louisville. And it read, would you support a partnership agreement with the city of Louisville where residents would have reciprocal access to community recreational facilities? Little over half, 53%, said yes, but I'd still support development of indoor facilities in Superior. Second most identified, well, the next two categories really were identified almost equally. The second one was yes, and this would eliminate the need for indoor facilities in Superior. That was about 1 in 5 or 20%. And no, any needed indoor facilities should be built in Superior. So I think that the overall indication is that there is some support for working jointly on these facilities, but also a strong indication of desire to have indoor facilities in Superior. We also had a couple questions that dealt with willingness to pay or tax-related aspects of the proposal, and this summarizes those results. This question was asked in terms of the categories you see, and as you run across there, the wording was, how much more in taxes annually would you be willing to pay for an indoor facilities program? The choices were none, no increase with 22%, $1 to $49 with 17%, $50 to $99, 21%, $100 to $149, 16%, $150 to $199, 13%, and $200 or more, 12%. So I think a couple observations about that. Again, about 1 in 5 people said no support at all, but clear indications of support at various levels of dollar levels. And again, we have the ability to link those results back to some of the priorities that have been identified. So as you go along, we will be able to provide that information that ties the willingness to support in dollars terms to the facilities itself. So that's the packet of slides that we have tonight, and I think we invite discussion and questions.
Great, thanks so much. Trustee Gregouris.
Yeah, I have a question, and it kind of surprises me that that 42% would say they have no strong preference for indoor facilities. What do you make of that? That's almost half.
No strong preference for location.
Right.
So what they're saying is that I take it that they're saying they would make the decision based on more than just location itself. Again, that's something we'll probe further, but I think it's a clear indication that people's minds aren't made up across the community that there's a single location or only one way to solve some of the demand that's clearly there. And as we talk, I invite these other folks who are really very close to this issue to also be a part of the discussion.
You have a comment?
Yeah, Chris Strapinski from Replay. The other thing I think we can think that might be telling us is that many people are willing to travel the distance of this community. It's a fairly small community, so some of those facilities could be located in a number of places, and they would still be willing to probably use them. So location is not what matters the most to those 42%.
Chris, somewhere in here, you said what percentage would use an indoor facility if there were one? Wasn't that in here somewhere?
Yes. In the survey?
In the information given to us.
Yeah, that's correct. It was 72% indicated that they would use an indoor facility. We also had a question that looked at people who are currently using either public or private facilities, and one of the things we'll want to explore with you is what they say in terms of their demand. It was 72%. Yes.
Trustee Pennington.
I love this third graphic with the correlating lines, priority rankings versus average money allocated. But just a little clarity. So when the axis says percent answering top priority, does that mean one, 2, or 3?
That's correct.
Okay. So what does the average money allocated? Is that the whole respondent list of 600 or just those who ranked it a priority?
No, the question was asked, if you had $100 to spend on this list of items, how would you allocate it?
So that's everybody.
That's everybody, and 27% or $27 was given to the indoor recreation facilities, and I think our thought was that, you know, the real finding here is the consistency across the two different ways of asking the question.
I think it's fantastic, the way in which you analyze this, because what the lighter color, it forced the whole population to divvy up that 100, right?
Exactly.
And the fact they do mirror each other, I think, is very telling.
Trustee Henson.
Yes, Trustee Henson.
So on that same slide, is it possible that someone would rank spending more money on an indoor recreation facility as opposed to trails just because they understand that that's going to cost more money so they can justify it? Or are they saying, we're willing to spend this money because it's that important to us?
I suspect it's both. I think that there's a certain amount of acknowledgement that some of these items cost differently, but I think what we were asking them to do is take this $100 and spread it across what they consider to be their top priorities.
So do you think that question could be further answered after you finish your analysis and do all your
Absolutely.
crosstabs and weighting and all that?
Yeah, I think this is really sort of the tip of the iceberg on a number of these questions, but this is a great example where I think it begs for additional exploration and breakdowns of how people responded.
Other questions from the board? So my take-home message from this is that obviously you're going to be doing some more analysis of the data, but it looks like there's at least interest in exploring. I mean, if there was, you know, if people said, yeah, I have no interest in doing any of this, then I think we could be done about exploring this anymore. But tell me if I'm wrong, but I take this as saying, yeah, there's general community-wide interest in exploring at least a few top 3 or 4 categories, so we should continue to plow ahead. Would you say that that's an accurate assessment?
Yes. Yes, I mean, I think that would be my take on it. Chris, you want to expand?
Yeah, I would agree. It seems like a fairly significant...
I'm sorry, Mike, sorry.
I would agree with that. It seems like a fairly significant statement of interest by people, especially when you look at what they said was important, and then the willingness to pay for it on top of that.
So, and I know that this isn't polling, but what do you think would be the next step to further clarify exactly the things that people, I mean, obviously there's some things that people aren't too interested in adding more outdoor aquatic facilities, it doesn't appear to me. But what would be if we were going to continue moving forward down this track, what would be the next step, would you say, to help clarify the community's interest in certain areas?
One of the unique things about this survey process, if you remember, is that we asked people to voluntarily submit to us their information for additional follow-up, and there was a decent number of responses who are open to that idea. So I think as Chris Cares, ProStack, and staff works through this information, if there are these critical areas that really need to be looked at further and dig deeper, we do have the ability to reach out to a decent number of residents who will voluntarily given their information to take that into that next level of detail.
And this will be a crystal ball question, but how soon do you think that we would be able to have enough clarity about whether or not we would want to go forward with a question to the voters, whether or not they want to spend some money to build certain facilities? Do you have, once again, might be too difficult to answer, but do you have an idea or a guess?
I think it's a little difficult at this time. I know that we're focusing on trying to get the information summarized within even as early as 3 weeks to have all the information cross-tab, weighted, and brought, and have a final presentation back to the board. So I think we've been really kind of focused on getting through this next step of just getting the information all compiled into a final report to present back to the board.
Okay. Trustee Gregos.
Yeah, just one last comment. Just great presentation. I mean, I just love how it's crystal clear. It definitely kind of sets the tone or what the residents are thinking about. So it feels very transparent, and I just really appreciate all the hard work you guys have done. It's great. Thank you. Well, appreciate it. And we'll look forward to the more details, obviously. But
So I agree. Thank you for everybody involved in this for all their hard work. But what it makes clear to me, and maybe this would be a direction to town staff, that we would be interested in exploring indoor civic space. So, okay.
Andrew, just one more final comment. I
Yes,
guess it'd
Trustee
be
Hanson.
interesting to ask some of these questions again after the November elections when, if ballot measure 3A passes and people are going to be spending an additional, what was that number, $250 a year?
$47 per $100,000 assessed value of their home.
Right, so.
Or that Boulder Valley.
I think that could have an impact on what our residents, how they feel about spending $30 more for indoor space, so.
All right, very good.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right. Thank you once again for all your hard work. Appreciate it. With that, brings us to 10, which is adoption of a resolution approving the First Amendment to the subdivision improvement agreement for the Superior Town Center. Mr. Magley.
Thank you, Mayor. The Town Center developer, RC Superior, is requesting an extension to complete the public improvements for FDP 1, Phase 1, within the Town Center. Included in your packet is an amendment to the SIA, which would extend the completion date from December 31st, 2014 to December 31st, 2015. It's the only change in that agreement. Larry Hirschfield with RC Superior and Randy Goodson are here, as well as Luke Taylor with Boulder Valley Ice. Larry and Randy are here to discuss this item, plus any updates they might have and answer questions, and then Luke Taylor's here to...
Yes, so could we start, it probably would be excellent to just get a little update about where we are with things in terms of the town center and perhaps with the indoor facility space. So
Yeah.
maybe we could just start there.
Sure. Sorry about that.
Luke Taylor, Boulder Valley Ice and Indoor Sports. Thank you for having me here tonight. I'm assuming Matt asked me here to provide an update as to where we stand. Obviously, we made some good progress this spring, and then everything kind of shut down. I think gentlemen from Ranch have been pretty upfront with the difficulties that we're experiencing with the SBA. In a nutshell, the SBA has been very, very slow. When we first started this process with them in April, we were told this is a 5 to 10 day approval process. Well, it's definitely not a 5 to 10 day approval process, and I don't know if we're, I think we'll eventually get through it, but I have no idea when that's going to happen. It's been very frustrating. We even got a congressional inquiry going from Representative Polis's office. The director of the SBA was in town last Thursday that we were able to talk to, and her message to us was, I'm interested in getting this through, work through normal channels. I'll keep my eye on this, and we'll do it. I really think the main issue has been the fact that there were two attorneys for this region for the SBA, and one of them retired in June, at the end of June, and they have not backfilled that position. And the better attorney is the one that retired, not the one that stayed there. So
that is your inside voice, right?
That's right.
Just checking.
Yeah.
Okay.
He didn't say that to them, right?
No. That explains things.
So, well, whatever. He's very, very slow. So, like I said, I think we'll get through. There aren't any objections other than, him sending an email periodically saying, your file's on my desk. We'll work on them in the order that were received, and that's what we're looking at. So, it became very apparent a couple months ago that we needed to have a plan B to make this happen. And plan B was a commitment from another party to provide what the SBA was going to provide, which is basically a second mortgage. As you know, we are creating a private special use building that does not have a lot of comps out there, does not have a lot of basis, not like an office building or a medical building or what have you. And so the SBA is really the group that can do it. So 2 months ago, we started to work on a plan to replace the SBA, or at least have a Band-Aid to get us so we can start. And we originally started by working with other financial institutions, and really the message that came back was that's why the SBA is here, that's what they do, and that's why we don't do this. So it became apparent that we needed to focus more on private individuals and figure out another way to do it. And as of Friday, we received the commitments we needed to be able to replace the SBA. So the dollars have been committed. We are now in the phase of documenting those and working on the legal language between the bank and obviously the town center developer and so forth to kind of get all that lined up. And what this plan would be is it would be a plan that would go into place, allow us to start construction, because the bank would fund our construction loan, which has already been approved and been approved since March. And then if the SBA comes into place, then these individuals would get a breakup fee and move on, and we'll go back with the SBA, because SBA is a better deal for us. I mean, it's much lower interest rate, obviously. And if they don't, then these individuals will have a 10-year second mortgage in a special use building. So.
As of Friday, you received what? The last half of that sentence got a little quieter to me. I didn't catch quite exactly what you meant.
Commitments for the amount of money we needed.
So, one question from me, and then Trustee Hansen. So, via the daily camera, where I seem to get most of my information about this project, I understand that there's construction will be happening sometime shortly. Is that?
Well, yeah, because so obviously the key is having the dollars in place, right? So when you have that piece of it done, then yes, we can start construction, because the construction loan has been approved. The bank just needs to have a plan for when the construction is done, that there's a takeout that reduces their exposure to it. And what this commitment does is it puts that plan in place. So it gives them comfort to say, either the SBA comes through and they put their money in, or the SBA doesn't come through and this money is in. And so where we are at the moment is documenting those two separate paths from the bank side of it in the construction loan documents. So it's not done yet, but I'm very optimistic that we're not looking at months, we're looking at weeks for having something taken care of.
Less than a month?
Not months, weeks. So I guess you could have 5 weeks, and that would be a month, but my full expectation is that this is me speaking as to where things, and keep in mind that I also came in here with the expectation the SBA would be done by May 10th, and we had a groundbreaking ceremony. Everyone took their picture, and then we stood here for a while. So I'm a little gun shy on specific dates, but I will say that my personal opinion is that we'll see something going on here in October.
So, as you can imagine, when there was a lot of dirt moved out there and we had the shovels and the pictures, residents got really fired up that we're going to be seeing things here shortly, and we're all getting a lot of questions.
Sure.
And we're in a very difficult position to say not so sure. So clarity would be great whenever you know for sure. So, Trustee Hansen.
Yeah, pretty much the same exact questions. I've been a huge supporter of this whole project the whole time. Our residents saw that article that said, yep, you're going to see some more activity out there at the end of the month. And I was hoping to leave here tonight with assurances that we're going to see construction on September 30th. Because
You won't see construction on September 30th. But I think that the way that the article, because there's only 3 quotes in there for me, and there's a lot more background that he did not put in there, but that's neither here nor there. What I said is
The whole story wasn't told in the paper? Shocked. Okay, sorry.
Big surprise. You know,
And that article was 2 weeks ago, as I recall.
Correct.
Was it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
He called, anyway, I don't need to
Yeah,
tell you how.
fair enough, sorry.
Newspaper guys do things.
For my
But
interjection by
I think
Trustee
what I
Hansen.
told him in that article was that I expected we had overcome a major roadblock, and that I expected to see something happening here within the next month or so. And, you know, it was middle of September, so that would put us in, you know, middle of October.
Okay. So I can appreciate that we can have fun and joke and laugh about things and all that, but to a lot of us, this is really serious. We've got residents coming to us saying, why did you guys push things so hard? Why did you go out there and start things? And now, nothing's happening but a bunch of weeds growing. So, you know, I'm not in a laughing mood about it. I want to see something happen.
Sure.
So.
As do I. I mean,
Yeah.
this summer sucked. I mean, this has been a bad summer trying to get this thing through here. And, you know, there's a lot of reasons as to why it took a long time, but, you know, it is what it is, and we've come up with a backup plan. I mean, if you guys wanted it to go faster, have the town of Superior do a second mortgage for this. I mean, which, you know, then you can do it tomorrow. But short of that, you got to find someone else who will put up the money for a second mortgage in a special use building, which I've done.
Okay.
So, you know, I understand you're getting a lot of grief. I mean, you pushed us hard, and I appreciate that, and I want you to know how hard I've worked on this thing this summer. I mean, this has not been you know, a fun process, I'll tell you that.
How confident do you feel that mid-October, even the end of October, that we're going to see activity out there? Can you say with 50% confidence, 100% confidence, somewhere in between?
%.
By the end of October?
Yeah.
Okay.
But is that construction or what?
That'd be construction.
Thank you.
Trustee Cirilli.
So, I know this has been very difficult for you, and you've been frustrated by the SBA. I'm rather shocked at this non-responsiveness by an agency that is put in place to do precisely what you're asking them to do for you. And my experience in government contracting, I've never heard of the SBA being that bad on the other side of the coin. So, did you ever get a response to any input, any response from the congressional inquiry?
Yes, we got a response from the congressional inquiry. Representative Polis sent in the inquiry. Within 10 days, we'd received a response back outlining their position that this project was not eligible because of subordination issues. And so we pointed out to them that 6 weeks ago, we had resubmitted that because that was the original issue with it. And we had resubmitted that as of the 17th of July, that issue had been resolved, and their subordination was willing to have, everyone was willing to subordinate to this. And so their response was to regurgitate their original response without looking at what we had submitted 6 weeks ago. And as of this point, we still have not received a response on that, because you know, it's seriously 2 paragraphs. I mean, it's not a lot of work for this guy to read this and to look at it. So what we've done is we've went to the Sacramento office, which is the group or the region that handles this, and we basically have pretended like we've passed this hurdle, that here's what the attorney said, here is the response that we've submitted on the 17th and resubmitted on the 25th of August, and now resubmitted again in September, that says we will do exactly what you say on your form that you want. And it's there, so we've asked them to move on with it. As of today, we still have not gotten a response back saying that they're moving on. So I don't know what to tell you. They're terrible. I mean, they really are. Anyway.
Trustee Gregores.
So I know you can't undo the past, but I have been really frustrated that you haven't come before us for the entire summer. And I think Randy has spoken on your behalf, but Randy's not you. You're, Boulder Valley Ice, and I hope that moving forward that we hear from you personally. It's great that you're here today, but I feel like you needed to be here for the last 2 or 3 months, even if you have nothing to report, or just give us whatever insights, or just even voice your own frustration. Because in the absence of that kind of communication, we've asked Randy, but Randy didn't have all the information, and basically he's not you, and he's not representing you.
No, fair enough.
Some of that was my fault as well, and my lack of communication with Luke, so.
I know, I've been waiting to talk to you for all summer, basically, so you're just getting it all, tonight. The other thing is that, when the article finally came out from Daily Camera 2 weeks ago, I think there was a relief on our behalf and raise these expectations that, we're finally going to break ground. So you coming here today and telling us, well, that's not exactly true and we have to wait another month, it increases my own frustration about this. Because I really feel like I want to know what the truth is. I don't care if it's bad, I just want to know what the truth is. If you say it's going to take 6 months before we break ground, I'd rather know that rather than the way that's been going. This has been a very frustrating process. I'm not happy about it at all.
Trustee Pennington.
So I'm going to hold you to the 90% chance by the end of October. So fast forward for us, if that's when you break ground and you start construction, when do you expect the facility to be open for business?
If the winter's good, 9 months, and if it's bad, 10 months.
So June, July, that
yeah,
kind of thing?
We're still holding out hope that we can get it open in time for the summer season, which would be June. Worst case scenario would be the next year's winter season, which would be September, so it would be August.
And so then to the developers, if that's the time schedule we're on, when do you start doing the roads and the infrastructure to lead to the town center?
So this might be an excellent segue to see where you're at and timelines and all that.
Good evening, Randy Goodson with RC Superior. So we have a construction schedule based upon when we have to deliver utilities, construction water, and then roads. And so our construction manager will interface and has been continually interfacing with Luke's construction manager. And so we are prepared to deliver all the utilities and the infrastructure in the time needed to meet his schedule.
Okay.
But we're dependent upon his schedule, and there's a lot of things we can't do before he gets to certain stages.
Right. And remind all of us, because we're a little bit unclear of what Phase 1 includes, and this is part of Phase 1, right?
Yes.
Okay. So what else does Phase 1 include?
Phase 1 is predominantly Main Street and Superior Drive, the newly named Superior Drive, which used to be Avenue D, and the utilities necessary to serve Block 12 and many of the other blocks.
Is the roundabout on McCaslin part of this, or is that at a later time?
That's at a later time, as well as the interior roundabout on Main Street.
So how, along those lines, what do you think give our residents an idea, what would the building look like before you would need to start your aspect of the project? Are we going to see vertical construction, or is it just a concrete pad that will?
The first thing that we'll be providing is construction water or water for fire, so that Luke can start enclosing the building. And so those will be underground utilities. And then we will be doing the grading for the road, Superior Drive fronting. The front of this building will also be constructing we'll be expanding a construction staging area and a construction access point. And so that's what you'll be experiencing on McCaslin. There'll be a construction gravel road and then a larger staging area.
So if their optimism comes true, that June is the date the street would be in and the utilities, is that what you'll see?
Yes, at their opening date, we'll have all the access, Main Street, Superior Drive.
Okay. Trustee Hanson.
So if their timeline is to start on October 30th or somewhere thereabouts, do you need to go up there and do any improvements because of the time lag? Do you regrade or do anything like that? Or
No.
it's ready for them to go?
It's ready for them to go.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And throughout this time frame, we've dealt with some issues that could have potentially caused significant delays. So, for example, you may recall that when we were going through the entitlement process, we had disclosed that one of the historical mine reports identified that there was a potential mine shaft in the middle of their site. And so we had to go out there and we excavated 35 feet down. We actually found a giant concrete cap, and we're very, very concerned. I called Matt, your town staff came out. I drove over, and we were there as our excavator, giant excavator, was not powerful enough to lift up this cap. We were really worried that would have pushed us back, potentially a year or so. In hindsight, maybe it would have pushed us back three months or 6 months or something like that. But that was a big risk factor that we got over. Once we pulled up the cap, we dug down another 15 feet to 20 feet to make sure that there wasn't just fill underneath this cap. And we don't know what this concrete device is, but it's a massive, massive concrete slab that looked like it would be a cap for a mine shaft. And maybe some prior surveyor hit that and found that and located it. It's hard to tell because the documents were so old. But that was a major risk factor in our overall schedule that we were all aware of could impact us. We were really fortunate that when we removed it and excavated, that we didn't find anything. But then again, we had 35 feet to recompact and to recompact the site. So that Xcel Energy has completed their dry utility design. That was something that was a time frame risk factor because we can't control Xcel Energy's response time. They were done and they got completed in July. They completed that process. So things that you're not seeing that would be that are potential risk factors relative to meeting a time frame, those issues have been addressed, and there are no other issues on our radar screen that certainly nothing that we anticipate or expect that would delay our ability to deliver everything on time.
Trustee Williams.
So I'm assuming that Phase 1 will be completed when Boulder Valley Ice is completed, or roughly about that time frame?
Most of Phase 1. There are components of Phase 1 that relate to the delivery of Block 10 and 11 as well, and those components will depend upon, that's just the street coming south of Main Street, so that'll depend upon when we have a product to be built on either of those blocks.
And so will Phase 2 be occurring simultaneously, or will it occur only when Phase 1 is completed?
We're now looking at Phase 1 and 2 together because now they're completed. And so we are out marketing. We've hired Cassidy Turley. Cassidy Turley is already, as you know, listing the office space and office buildings. And now, probably this week, we'll be executing a listing agreement for all the rest of the land with the exception of the hotel site. And that's another 7 blocks of 7 or 8 blocks of land so that we have blocks, and we're going to offer them for commercial buildings, for apartments, for condos, for townhomes. We're not necessarily going to accept any of the offers, and our agreement with them doesn't require us to accept any of the offers. But we're, as far as making up for the momentum, now that we have FDP 1 and 2 approved, we can present to the development community, everything that's available. And if we have builders come in that want to build the type of product that we need in the town center, and that understand the design guidelines and the construction criteria that we have, that we all have, if they're compatible with the project, then we'll be able to enter into those discussions. And we can deliver any of the blocks pretty much within FDP 1 and 2. Each one would require a different type of phasing of infrastructure, but because we're at this stage and we have everything approved, the prior scenario, let's say, was you get Boulder Valley Ice under construction and you have one building there, and then other blocks sort of come in as we get the FDPs approved. Now we have a contract with Cornerstone and Superior Medical Office with a development company called Sawtooth. Centura Hospital, that was a very long process, but just recently Centura Healthcare executed the lease for the ground floor of the Superior Medical Office building, and I understand that there's signed leases for about 30% of the Superior Medical Office building. It's contingent upon the start of construction of the Boulder Valley Ice facility, but that's a process that's well underway. They're in discussions with tenants that would represent 75% of the space. They only need 50% pre-leased to start their construction. So in the ordinary course, we would see BVI going forward, and then maybe Superior Medical Office 6 or 9 months later. I think in this scenario, Superior Medical Office will probably follow by 3 or 4 months. And then all these other blocks that I said that we are in discussions with some builders, but we had because of the approval of FDP2 and the fact that now we have almost half of the project with the roads designed, we wanted to be able to go out to the building community, all building types, and create a sense of urgency. If you want a mixed-use building, an office building, a retail building, condos, townhomes, we're going to have a bid deadline, and to try to really motivate people to show up.
Can you also tell us what, where Phase 2 is?
Lisa,
Or just roughly? I mean,
It's
points?
blocks.
The next page.
Right there.
Yeah.
Right there.
No, it's not.
So what we're marketing now, of course, this is Main Street, this is McCaslin, and this is Block 12, Lot 2 and 3. The steel is currently staged on Lot 3 and a portion of Central Park. There's been a slight reconfiguration that will change Lot 1 on Block 12 for Superior Medical Office, and they'll be coming forward.
Was that Cornerstone?
It was Cornerstone. It's a combination. Cornerstone was going to be a developer occupant, and now they are joint venturing with an office building developer at our request to make sure that timing and everything happens. So now it's a joint venture between some of the partners in Cornerstone, not the whole medical partnership, but some of the partners with a medical office building focused developer called Sawtooth, and so they're calling that Superior Medical Office. So that building is going to be separated by about 30 feet from the Boulder Valley Ice building and located right here. Other things that happened, previously we would have a delay on Block 12, Lot 1 because the floodplain came through the middle of this lot here like this. And the floodplain's been revised, so now it's showing this is the revised floodplain, but this floodplain previously came through the lot like this. It's been revised, that portion of the floodplain was revised because it was part of CDOT's application to revise the floodplain. And so that was just approved, I believe, also in July. And so that's completely freed up this block. And, for example, Sawtooth didn't want to spend any money pursuing this block when it was under a floodplain, not knowing when they could use it. So through this time frame, that block is unconstrained from third-party factors.
So are they part of Phase 1 or Phase 2?
This is part of Phase 1,
Okay.
completing Phase 1, and that includes Block 10 and 11. Now, Phase 2, it includes Block 9, 13, 15, 14, and 25. And then, because FDP2 comes down to Discovery Parkway, we've included it in our marketing. We have included every block that we can get to with the roads in FDP 1 and 2. So now, Cassie Turley are marketing Block 2 and 8 exclusively for office. And they will be shortly, in their residential group, will be marketing Blocks 9, 10, 11, 13, 15, 14, 25, and 26, Lot 1. And then, once BVI gets under construction, we've been talking to a couple of different groups regarding the hotels. There's a couple of hotel operators that have been pursuing us for a hotel in some portion of this block here. And if we don't get to a agreement by the time BVI starts construction, then we'll list that with a hotel broker that we've been working with. And so every block that we are directly serving will be working on going vertical. And then when the town, if the town ends up exercising the option to have us pursue civic space in the town square, then that would accelerate the construction of the town square as well, and we would start working on that building, because at that point, we would essentially just need to bring commercial tenants for the first floor. So the situation we have today is a project where a lot more of these uses are coming together, and potentially there's a lot more, we expect there's a lot more momentum. We would have definitely liked the original plan to come together, but we haven't been sitting idly still. It certainly, I understand how it can feel like that, but there's a lot that we're doing to keep developing the community. And Larry Hirschfield's here as well. I know he wanted to talk to you.
Yeah, so thank you for the background, and now getting to the topic at hand.
Well, Larry Hirschfield, it's been a little while since I've been here, and I'm the CEO of Ranch, and to some of the comments that were made, I would say that I personally feel like I owe you an apology for not having been a better, or ensuring that you were having better communication of what was going on, even to the extent we were having issues. I mean, it's always better to underpromise and overdeliver than vice versa. And I would say that what's happening over the summer, and this is by no means an excuse, what's happening is we constantly thought we were a couple of weeks from being done, and we're hoping to be able to come with good news. And in retrospect, what we should have been doing is saying, this is where we are, and we're hoping to be resolved shortly, but there's no certainty we will be. In Luke's defense, I can tell you that he and I think last meeting, CFO of Ranch, Nate Birchall, was here. I can tell you that they have been intensely working on this, and we have been racking our brains how to get the SBA on board, and recently decided that we needed a backup plan, and candidly, Ranch is financially supporting that plan, even though we have no direct interest in BVI, because we just need to get the project started. We haven't lost any of our enthusiasm for the project. We think the market still, this is a terrific project and will be a great project. When we had the groundbreaking, whenever that was, and the pictures and so forth, we believed that this was a pretty straightforward thing, and we'd in fact be starting pretty quickly, and it turned out not to be the case, and we kept thinking we were close, and it turns out that we had issues that were more difficult to resolve than we realized, and we had logistical issues, for better or worse, with the SBA, and we're to the point now where we need a backup solution. And so the way things are right now, Luke's found the money, we're helping. It's not done, but the money's committed, and we're in the papering stage, so hopefully we're a couple of weeks to having the papers done so he can start. We are continuing to submit our application to the SBA and hope they'll ultimately come through, because the way his deal works is he doesn't need the money now. He needs a commitment that convinces his construction lender to start construction, so that when the building's finished, that construction lender has takeout that's acceptable to the construction lender. And so hopefully these commitments will be solidified and documented. If the SBA does come through later, which would be the best solution, then those loans won't be needed, and those folks will get paid for being a standby in essence. And if they don't, then they'll be committed to funding, and his lender will be satisfied. So on a go-forward basis, to the extent I can, I'll try and be sure that when we're having these sorts of issues, we're at least communicating better, because as you say, even if it's bad news, you want to know what's going on. So anyway, so my apologies for the lack of communication. It hasn't been for lack of effort, but it doesn't forgive that, so.
Apology accepted.
Thank you for that. Trustee Hanson?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask one more question to Randy. He kind of addressed it, and that was with Cornerstone. And you explained kind of their new partnership with Sawtooth. Are you saying that they have their financing in place and they're ready to go as soon as this certain date comes, that once BVI starts? And does that include Impact Sports? Is Impact Sports part of that?
Let me take the last part of the question first. Impact Sports is part of BVI. What we're referring to is Boulder Valley Ice and Indoor Sports. Impact Sports is part of that. In the context of our conversation for the last 45 minutes and under-promising and over-delivering, we have a office building developer that we believe is very well capitalized. They've proven to us they're well capitalized. They own a lot of buildings, and they've been able to develop a lot of buildings. They do not have to prove that they have their construction funds in place until 90 days after BVI starts construction. That's when they have to prove that they have their construction loans in place and 50% of the building pre-leased, or we pull the option. They have a purchase option, and we have several other groups that have that found out we were working on this with Cornerstone and several other groups that are interested in building a medical office building here. So we will. Having said that, you know, when people commit to you, we commit to them. A lot of times not contractually, just because we need to be able to evaluate changing circumstances without feeling like we're compelled to do something that doesn't make a lot of sense. But we'll work with them as long as we think they're working in earnest to get these buildings built, whether it's, you know, whichever the building is.
Good, thanks.
Justice Gomez.
So originally I was going to...
I would just add on, I'm sorry, I would just add on Sawtooth. So Sawtooth is, they've done a lot of projects. They have a wealthy equity investor that's funded a lot of projects for them, and they've put a lot of time and money into the project. So we have every reason to believe they really want to do the project, and if they get it leased up, that they have the money to do the project. Having said that, like anything else, it's not done until it's done. But they seem to be a very capable, well-funded, quality medical office building developer, and they've acted very professionally, and they've gone about getting leases secured, and they've done all the things that one would hope they would do to get the deal done. Mm-hmm. So we're optimistic about their ability to perform, but it's not done until it's done.
Yep. Okay. Thanks.
I can add one additional piece on Sawtooth. I went to a meeting with them last week regarding a construction meeting, and we worked on the timelines and everything for them as well. So they are very interested in being, being under construction when we are. I think that would be their goal. So
okay.
that's what they're working towards.
I certainly feel a lot better after this conversation with the three of you. So thank you guys very much.
Justice Gomez.
So originally my question was going to be about when does the medical office building start construction relative to BVI. I guess my next question then relates to the construction of those and/or any commercial versus, you said you're also marketing the residential. I'm concerned about the timing or phasing of residential relative to commercial. So can you talk to me about if you might start BV Ice, but then have a whole bunch of residential come down the pike? Or is it still going to happen that we're talking commercial first or commercial early, res later?
The schedule that we've always talked about is starting with Boulder Valley Ice, and that's still the case, following it with medical office and residential. And as we have rooftops in the community, then we'll have a better opportunity to bring in retail commercial. So that's the schedule we've always talked about, and that's the schedule as we see it today.
Trustee Williams.
So what I'd say about that is we have the best broker, in our opinion, to develop opportunities for us, both residential and commercial. And so, and we are aggressively trying to get commercial simultaneous or even earlier than residential. For example, we have interest from potential hotel investors, developers. I would say, I bring it up very cautiously because the fact that you have a broker who represents that he might have hotel investors is a long way from actually having a hotel investor. So there shouldn't be any implication that we think we're going to have a hotel under construction anytime soon, although if there's an investor that's interested, we would love to. So we are marketing the core of the project, both residential and commercial. It is the case that commercial will become easier to sell when we have more rooftops right near the commercial, but we would happily do commercial development simultaneous with residential if we can incite the buyers, and we're very incented to incent the buyers, and we are very incented ourselves to try and bring in commercial and residential developers. So we're doing both simultaneous.
And then my other comment relates to seconding what Trustee Gregoris said, because we've been asking for, every 2 weeks, asking for a presentation on BV Ice and not seeing it, and that was a really, really, really big problem. And then the other comment I'm going to make, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to be negative, but when asked about where you could get funding, that we should go for a second mortgage, we already donated land. Really, seriously, what more would you expect? So I hope that was just an offhand comment that you didn't really mean. So that's.
Trustee Williams.
I was kind of offended. Yeah.
No. It was a explaining the situation, the timing of where things were at. It was more of a tongue-in-cheek comment to say, if you wanted to start tomorrow, that's what it would take. Other than that, we had to wait through the process to get someone else to do that, which we've done. So, it is what it is.
Trustee Williams.
So Randy, you mentioned something about if the town were to commit to Civic over the town square portion, I forgot what block that is, you would be able to get... Civic. Block 6, okay, thank you very much. That you would be able to start on that sooner rather than later. Is that correct, or how has that changed the game?
Well, that building is intended to be a 3 to 5 story building, but definitely not a single story building. And with the town committing to the civic space in that building, that puts the building in a situation where it's already significantly leased up or sold, and it reduces the amount of space that we have to bring tenants into so that we can start construction. So it just helps us get that much farther down the road.
Okay.
All right, any other?
Yeah, like the end of Deborah's question. So let's say we take a significant chunk of space. At what point would you start that building 6?
We would start the building as soon as we have the tenants, all the tenants lined up, and we have the funds in place to construct it.
Are you saying 100% of the space filled?
Well, it really depends on the tenants, that we get, and the leases that we have with those tenants. It'd be unusual for us to wait for 100% pre-leasing. Sometimes you get tenants that don't pay a lot, but they add a lot. And if that's the situation, you have to prove to yourself that they really do add a lot. So, for example, a grocery anchor doesn't pay a lot of rent, but they bring in a lot of other tenants that do. If, for example, we were able to get a small market, which we've been talking to brokers, we'd love to get a small 10 to 12,000 foot market, we would probably need to wait and fully lease up the space to prove out the economic thesis that building still makes sense.
Any other questions? Trustee Skumats?
I'm just, are we on item 10?
We
Or
are.
are we on an update that precedes item 10? I'm
Well,
confused.
It's all sort of a combination. So we're on item 10, yes.
Are we moving towards the actual
That's
agenda?
where I was
Items
trying to
asking.
move. Yes, that's where I was hoping to go.
So is there a presentation on this SIA, or are we just meant to ask questions based on the review of it?
Randy Goodson with RC Superior, if you would please consider our current comments to explain why we're requesting an extension to the subdivision improvement agreement.
Thank you.
And that's
Okay.
a one-year extension, right?
That's right.
Okay.
So, my question, I guess, comes up with, so what does that do to the sort of period of vesting and to the money that we get for remediation of eyesores or lack of progress or whatever the right term was, and when in this process, if we delay this, if this gets moved out a year, sort of when are our amenities built, or do we, like, if your deadline moves a year, does our deadline move a year as well? Is that is that the appropriate thing, or kind of, those are some of my questions, as well as a few other things, but.
So I think what you asked are sort of two different questions.
Several.
One of them being your deadlines and the other one being our deadlines. This doesn't affect our deadline in the context that our deadline relates to when we complete the improvements to FTP1, not when we start. And so we have to complete all the improvements to FTP1 within 5 years of the original approval date. So this doesn't change our deadline at all to the full completion of FDP1. We're still held to that time frame. As far as your obligations, your staff may want to answer that question. From my perspective, what I'd say is that once we complete public improvements, we have to maintain them for 2 years from the completion date, and then they're taken over by the town. If we were to complete improvements, let's say, before there's any buildings in place paying taxes and providing economic benefit to the town, then we still would have completed those improvements, and when the 2 years is up, you're maintaining them, and there may or may not be buildings there. To the extent we time the completion of the public infrastructure closer to the time that buildings are built, that's, I think, an economic advantage to the town to have the buildings in place at the time when you're taking over the cost of maintaining those facilities.
So what's the downside to our delaying our decisions? I guess that's what I'm confused about. If you're moving out a year, what's the downside to us moving out a year? I'm sorry I missed it.
I believe it's an upside to you, not a downside. The upside is that.
Yeah. So okay, that's what I'm saying. So why would we not expect to move it out? Our deadlines as well as
He
yours.
says they have a narrower time of completion, and therefore we have a narrower window of holding that asset and having the repair without having a tax base to to pull into the town. That's what I heard.
Yeah.
That's right. Maybe I'm talking past you and I don't understand what you're asking me.
I'm saying, I think we ought to be delaying our deadline. Is that not what you're saying?
Which one?
For our public improvements and our decisions about our civic improvements.
In effect, you are delaying your deadline because your deadline starts when we complete the improvements. So by us completing the improvements closer to the time that buildings are in place, your deadline doesn't start until those improvements from your...
I think you're agreeing. I think you're talking.
I do too, and that's why I keep saying, why are people attacking me like I'm saying something backwards? I'm not. And my other thing is, so does this mean our October 1st deadline, or whatever it is now a year from now?
We haven't talked about that.
And that's part of this set of questions. That's why I'm raising it.
As I understand, Randy's talking about the public improvements when they actually turn over to the town.
That's not my question.
Okay,
My question is, what is the downside of if he gets a year, we get a year?
On October 1?
Yes.
I see. On committing to public space?
Yes.
Okay.
The public space is unrelated to the completion of the public infrastructure. The public we'd like to get to work now on tenanting the building on the town square.
Many people want many things, and we'd like to have this start earlier as well. And I'm just saying, if we make some concessions, then maybe we get some concessions, and that's sort of where I'm talking about. That's all.
It doesn't affect the vested rights, by the way.
I got that out of his first comment. Yeah.
So I feel, related to this topic, though, I feel pretty confident, given the presentation that ProStack did earlier, that we're going to want some of that space, so, I mean, we can wait for a while, but...
I just feel like if we're not getting commitments, whatever, action, then that means there should be a downside for not getting that action. And that downside is a later commitment.
Finish your questions. And,
I'm done.
Mine, just totally different tack.
Trustee Sorelli.
So, Randy, Mr. Grissom, the word momentum's been used a couple of times. We all recognize there's been a loss of momentum. And what exactly do you foresee will happen to regain that momentum that we had a year ago when dirt was moving, people were excited, things were, we expected things to be done by the end of this year and that sort of thing. So just give me a picture of what you see happening to get that momentum going, get that feeling back.
The way we look at it is actual foundations. You really create a lot of momentum. There's always newspaper articles and there's always people trying to explain what's going on, but when the foundations are poured, that's the sign you have a construction loan. The building's going to be completed 95% of the time. And then I think we have an opportunity to exceed the momentum we would have had, where we kind of bring buildings on at longer staggered intervals. Now we have the ability to, a year from now, have a quarter of the project under construction. And with a lot of construction starting in a very short time frame.
So I guess from your point of view, or what I'm hoping I'm hearing is that something's going to be happening that'll get customers coming to you excited about getting involved in this.
I would answer the question as actions work a lot better than words. And I think if we're under construction on a building the size of BVI, it will be very noticeable and I think would recreate the momentum in itself. It'll be a big deal. It's a big building. It'd be hard to miss. So once we get going, at least I'm quite confident that will create a lot of momentum in itself because it's a big deal. But we got to get going. That's that's the answer. Get bulldozers going and get foundations being poured and walls going up and grading starting to happen on the roads. And I think that in itself we're going to start, we are marketing to numbers of people, but I think once that building is under construction, there'll be a lot more enthusiasm from all of our potential users as well, because they'll see that things really started. So I get the frustration. From my part at least, I am not concerned that we can't recover it. We just have to start. It's as simple as that to me.
Any other questions or concerns about a particular topic? Otherwise, we'll entertain some action.
I think Lisa's got a question.
Trustees comments?
I do. So I guess the way I look at this is, you'd like a concession or a change, and my question is sort of what do we get as well? I think that there should be a consequence to a change in the agreement on both sides, and, what are the possibilities? Different or improved funding of our amenities, delay of our decision. To me, there has to be a consequence to a delay in this a change in this agreement. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. What is there? What do we get in return for this change? I don't think I'm asking an unfair question. So is there a delay in the decision on our part?
I mean, for what it's worth, we are financially supporting a project we have no interest in. We are, candidly, not your problem at all, we're behind where we'd like to be financially in this project as well, because time is money for projects. So this isn't, I don't think this, at least I would hope this wouldn't be viewed as, because there's a delay, therefore there's an opportunity to extract more from us, just as sort of a pound of flesh. I mean, we are working as hard as we can to build this project, to get it going, to put up some more capital to get it going, and are trying in every way we can to do the right thing, although, again, I would say we should have been more communicative along the way.
Yeah.
But
And I don't feel that way at all. I feel like I'm ready to read the resolution, so.
Okay.
just so you know.
Appreciate that, thank you.
I think the entire board feels that way.
And perhaps my question was badly phrased, but I feel like we're up against a deadline of October 1st, and that concerns me. I don't feel like we're ready by October 1st, so I would be happy to hear about an extension of that deadline, for instance. So.
If I might add a little clarity to this, in our work session ahead of the meeting, we discussed the October 1 deadline by which we had committed to saying yay or nay on space in parcel 6. Town space in parcel 6. So I think the question, Lisa's, and we don't have the results of our indoor survey fully analyzed at this point. So the question I think Lisa's asking is, can that be delayed till November 1st?
Or some other deadline.
Or December 1st, until all those results have been analyzed? So I guess that comes down to the question, do we feel we need that extra money?
Should we move to item 11 now?
All right.
But that's the thing that's making me nervous. So I don't see why, if one side wants something changed, why?
I don't think I personally need that extra time.
Yep, I don't need that extra time.
I don't either.
Does anybody else need the extra time?
So my thought is, I see exactly where Trustee Skumat is coming from, that we don't have a finished product right now, and we were expecting that to be done.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we're not committing to 40,000 or 60,000 square
Right.
feet. We're just saying, yes, we know we're going to have something in there.
Some space needs.
But we
And I
need
don't know if we need to
know the details.
delay that.
We don't need to know the details.
No, we need to know what their expectations are.
Right, well, apparently they're discussing those.
They're in executive session.
Yeah.
Did they have a timeline when they might return?
They said give them 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Is there anything else we can do in the meantime here?
Are there any other questions about this agreement that anybody has?
I do not.
I think it's rather straightforward otherwise.
I'd just like there to be consequences.
Yeah, I understand exactly where you're coming from.
Otherwise, everything's just going to slip because they'll assume it's a pushover.
I don't see any upside for them wanting things to slip down.
Well, no,
Time's money for them, too.
Again, not our problem. That's also an opportunity
Well,
cost to us.
welcome back.
We're losing tax dollars too, so there are consequences to us.
So we're just trying to talk about what we have going with our brokers and and whether we can, and how to balance what sort of earlier was, like, when would you build the building if we told you we wanted you to build it, from, well, we don't really want to tell you what we want to build for longer. I mean, if it's possible, we'd really like to stick to the schedule because we've engaged brokers and they're sort of marketing the building, and we need some firmness. So it's not, I mean, I hate to come across like it's always reasonable for more time, except there are activities we're undertaking that are sort of reliant on these dates. And so we'd prefer not to extend if there's a way to get it done in time. I don't really know if that's acceptable, but if we can stick to the schedule.
I think we just needed honesty from you.
And recognizing that this costs us also, so in delayed tax dollars and whatnot, so this matter.
Can I make a motion?
Yep. Duly.
Dueling motions.
I'd like to make a motion on Town of Superior Resolution Number R-49, Series 2014, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving the First Amendment to the Subdivision Improvement Agreement for the Superior Town Center.
Motion by trustee Hanson, second by trustee Gregouris. Further discussion? All in favor? Hanson, Cirelli, Muckle, Williams, Gregouris, Pennington, opposed to Skumatz. That motion carries. Thank you.
Thanks. Keep coming back and seeing us.
Nice to see you, Larry.
Nice to be here. Hopefully I'll be here next time with better.
Okay, very good.
Let's get the big Mo going.
All right. Speaking of Mo, I feel like we've lost meeting Mo, so let's keep Mojo. Yeah, let's keep moving forward. So that brings us to item number 11, public hearing and adoption of an ordinance rezoning the property of 414 McCaslin Boulevard, known as the Shan Shan Chu property, from agricultural urban reserve to open space natural OSN. With that, open the public hearing. Phyllis, you have proof of publication?
Yes, I do.
Mr. Magley? Too much happiness happening over there. You're up.
We have committee appointments for planning commission.
No, we don't. No, we're going back to 11. We're in the public hearing at the moment.
Oh, Shan, I'm sorry.
No, I like that momentum. A little too much.
We'll get there soon.
So the town recently purchased and closed on the Shan property, which is located in South Original Town, adjacent to McCaslin Boulevard. It's about a 6.5 acre piece of property that's currently zoned agricultural urban reserve. This action tonight by the board, if approved, would rezone the property to open space natural. The property was purchased with open space funds, and at the time it was purchased, I think it was the intent of the town to keep it as open space natural property. So this just is one more step to do that, rezones the property, and then in October you will see a conservation easement agreement with the Boulder County as they participated in the purchase with us. So.
Very good. Questions from the board? Yeah, Mr. Hanson.
So on page 64, it's the second page of this, second paragraph. It says Boulder County partnered with the town on the purchase, contributing $125,800 toward the purchase price of $680 in exchange for a conservation easement that will be presented for the board's consideration at upcoming meeting. So we're going to consider, what if we say we don't like it, the conservation easement? You're saying we have a choice in that? because you're going to present it to us for our consideration.
Right, yeah.
So they've already contributed the money towards this property, it's purchased, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so if we're looking at it, we say we don't really like that conservation easement, or do we have that choice?
Then they won't contribute the $125,000.
Okay. Okay.
It's pretty convincing.
This is for
124,000 reasons to...
Yeah.
Other questions from the board?
Yeah.
Trustee Sorelli.
I think it's a pretty simple question, but I just wanted to make sure. The zoning is open space natural, would not be inconsistent with having that emergency road go through?
It's a necessity until Rogers property develops, and then you'll have your secondary access there through that. Once that happens, we can take out that road, make it into a trail or something like that, so.
What if you want to leave it?
And that we've made it clear to the county that that'll be in place until that happens, so.
Okay, so that, yeah, that won't be a problem with their conservation easement.
Trustee Gregorus.
Even though we're all going to go through this tonight, the open space, the house though will stay there for how long?
Up to 3 years.
Up to 3 years?
Yes.
Occupied?
No.
Not occupied?
No.
And storage.
RVs
But I'm
will be
confused.
removed.
It's not even occupied, what do we need to keep it for 3 years?
Was one of the things that they had asked for and said that it was a deal breaker
Really?
because they needed it for storage, so. In my mind, it was a concession we could make, so.
And at the end of the 3 years, then what happens?
We've budgeted for demolition.
Oh, we have to do it, huh?
Trustee Scalaz.
So what if we decide that it's important for the town to retain that emergency road? Can we retain it forever?
The communication we've had with the county is it'll remain in place as long as we need it,
Who determines need?
the town.
We do.
And that even if we get an exit through Rogers, we can still retain it? It's not like that automatically precludes us keeping this road?
Doesn't mean we automatically have to take it out. It does not.
Okay, because more roads are not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Other questions from the board?
Yeah, just one
Trustee
more
Hanson.
question. I didn't see the planning commission meetings, but the planning commission commented that the town should retain options for creative uses. What were those creative uses? Did they discuss those?
Creative.
Creative uses?
Creative open space?
No, it says
Creative
should
uses,
retain
that was
options
the-
for creative uses for the site.
That was the wording.
Lisa Ritchie, town staff. Members of the planning commission are here tonight if they might be willing to speak more directly to that. But from memory, it was, they just didn't want to preclude something that was outside of what is listed in the code that would be compatible with what would be within an open space district. But they didn't name things specifically that I can recall.
Like a bird watch area or something like that?
They just wanted to leave options on the table.
Artists with easels.
Got it.
All right, thank you, Lisa.
And so those
Oh,
were
some
retained as
planning.
creative options?
Well, let's just,
Go another way.
yeah, please.
Public comment?
Thank you. Rita Dozell, Planning Commission. What we talked about was that if we zoned it as open space, as a town, we want to maintain the opportunity to do something more creative or different than just the definition of open space, if it presents itself. So in the future, let's say after Rogers property gets built up, we might need some other kind of an access or a trailhead or some kind of a parking or a little bit of an amphitheater or, it could be almost anything, but we didn't want to be locked in as a town, never again to be able to change that out of just natural open space. If we felt it was important to be able to get back through that easement back to the Boulder County open space, then how would we be able to do that? We might come up with a creative way to do that. And then we ask the question, would we have to rezone it again? Would we ever be able to rezone it, or could we come in and just make an amendment to it? And that's what we were told, is that staff, as well as the attorney, told us that we could make a change if we decided as a town it was in our best interest to do something just a little bit different than just open space with no access through there.
And the Boulder County
Boulder County would
thing doesn't put
That easement.
a barrier in that?
The easement would, I mean, we work well with Boulder County, so I mean, if there's a trailhead or something like that, we would have discussions with them, so.
But they're pretty hardcore about
They are.
traditional
Yeah,
uses
yeah.
only. I mean,
That's
they're,
right. They're open natural space. I mean,
But they also know that this is a very small space. It's along McCaslin. It's a very narrow, really, access. It's not like 150 acres. We're only talking, or 650 acres. We're talking about 6.5 acres. So I don't think they'd come back and be, well, at least that's what we were told, is that we just wanted to leave it open.
Yeah.
Don't get stuck into that. Today, we think it's great to have it so we can look past, and we want to, pass to the mountains, and that's a good thing, but let's not lose the potential for something else that we haven't even thought of yet.
So I think the only real restriction on this property, I mean, we can zone things and rezone them as needed. Really, the only restriction on here is what Boulder County easement would preclude.
Right. And right now, we were told that it was a way for us to help get some funding. I mean, and that's the way I view it, as a way for us to help get funding and also to access an easement to the Boulder County open space that's behind there.
and as far as our funding, where is it coming from? The open space
Open space,
sales
yeah.
tax or the bond?
Sales tax.
No, I think there's
Bond.
bond
Bond
money,
money.
so that would be the first.
Yeah.
So doesn't that have limitations as well?
Natural open space.
So you can't just purchase funds for natural open space under the bonding and then rezone it for something else.
That's correct.
Although
Unless you
so
pay it
could,
back.
you just pay it back.
And then you pay, okay,
You pay
you have
back,
to pay it back.
or you might not have to rezone it, you might need to amend a little bit somehow, like if you want access through there, because people think of open space as just open space. There may be a way you want to put a trailhead or something there.
I mean, as I see it, we're pretty locked in. I mean, yeah, we
Once
could
the
do a
con-
trail with Boulder County, but
Once the
we're-
conservation easement is on there, there's no going back. So
Exactly.
Just as long as we understand that.
good, because I was thinking, you mean we can buy Verhey back? I don't think so.
No.
I hope not.
So I think
it's
the creative
great
uses
cost.
thing is really pretty.
Well, we didn't use the term
Okay.
creative use. We
Okay.
used it, if we wanted to do something like a trailhead or something else on that, rather than just knocking down the building and leaving it look.
And as the town manager said, we have a very good working relationship with Boulder County, and we always have an annual review of trailheads and trails with the county, so.
I'm
But that's
going
about
into
all.
this that it's going to be
So-
open space, and that's what it's going to be.
Yeah, that's
I
what
think
the
that's
thinking
the
is.
safe
Any other public comment? Otherwise, I'd really love to move forward if possible. Seeing no additional public comment, any other board questions? Seeing none, close the public hearing. Any action? Trustee Williams?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion for the Town of Superior Ordinance Number O-8, Series 2014, an ordinance of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior rezoning the Shan Chan Chu property from agricultural urban reserve to open space and natural uses.
Motion by trustee Williams, second by trustee Gregorius. Discussion? All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much. That brings us to item number 12, adoption of resolutions making appointments to the Parks, Recreation, Open Space, and Trails Advisory Committee, Recycling and Conservation Advisory Committee, and Youth Services Committee, and Planning Commission. Just a heads up that in terms of the Youth Services Committee, the board, I believe, is interested in appointing everybody, and so action is not going to be occurring tonight, so we can redraft resolutions. So, already voted? Okay. Well, the process will be that people will vote, then pass it to the town clerk, who will then tabulate the results. So, I guess I should vote.
Yeah, I got to vote. These are passed already. Oh my gosh, people are fast.
everybody down there?
So you can pass along to all of the kids that applied to the Youth Advisory Committee. Yay, they're all on.
Yeah, Martin will
I
reach
think-
out to them tomorrow.
Michelle, are you ready texting that out? Huh?
Can we get set up for 13 here? Well, you can tabulate it.
Yeah, we're moving along.
Oh.
Sounds like a plan.
Paul is here already, so.
Paul's armed and ready.
Can Paul start giving his presentation?
That was my hope.
Is that what you just said?
That was my hope.
That was what he said.
Okay.
Paging through.
So,
He's turning into Mayor Grumpy.
Paul Nellis, our finance director, is here tonight to give an overview of the initial reading of the ordinance for the 2015 budget, highlighting some of the discussion from our last meeting on the budget. Just to get clarification so we can finalize for adoption on October 13th. Paul?
Thank you, Mr. Magley. Paul Nellis, town staff. As the manager identified, before you is a first reading or preliminary ordinance as it relates to the town of Superior budget. We have it noted as discussion and action item. Just a little bit of procedural background where we got to where we are right now. Board and Finance Committee began their review in late August. As a result of that review, 3 pending policy issues were discussed with the board on September 8th, 2 weeks ago. What staff wanted to do really as part of this particular discussion tonight is identify where those items are within the budget and get feedback from the board if in fact they should be, or how they should be incorporated or not in the final budget and public hearing, which you will hopefully set that public hearing for October 13th. Generally, the budget in front of you is similar to the initial budget. There have been some revenue modifications, which are summarized in your cover memo. I wasn't specifically going to go through any of those. For the most part, they're relatively innocuous, identifying some one-time revenues as well as some modest ongoing revenue enhancements. Really what I wanted to note or have some confirmation with the board is on the residual policy issues, which we discussed 2 weeks ago. Generally, we'll go through those. Those 3 items include the addition of a town staff member to help with expanded town programs, events, and committees. One of the committees specifically is the Youth Services Committee that we discussed, an additional help to get that committee up and operational to be a successful functional committee. Budget impact on that, beginning in 2015 with salary and benefits, is $54,000. The second item noted in your packet as a follow-up item was attempt to accelerate the construction of the school parcel park improvements. Initially, this project was budgeted for $1 million in 2018 and another $1 million in 2019. Staff has accelerated that project within the budget that you have to begin design on that project in 2015, with construction then of $1 million in 2016 and then again another $1 million in 2017. There is an impact as it relates to accelerating that particular project, and generally the impact is by moving that project forward. Essentially, we're borrowing money from the general fund to pay for that particular project. And essentially, the practical impact of that is the general fund balance gets down to 53%, I believe it is, excuse me, I'm trying to find the number, 53% of our reserves. The board has a policy in place where general fund balance shall be at a minimum, the projected expenses should, revenues in the fund will be at least 75% of projected expenses. By accelerating the park, that number drops down to 53%. At the end of the 5-year planning horizon, though, we are able to get up to that 75% fund balance threshold. So that is one item that staff wanted to note to the board and ensure you were aware of that. And then the final policy item to be discussed this evening was contribution to the City of Louisville for their regional annual fireworks show, and incorporated in the budget is a $10,000 contribution annually for that particular program. The Louisville manager identified to Mr. Magley that the total cost for that program is roughly $25,000, so we're proposing to fund that program at less than half of its cost. In addition to those 3 policy items, to follow up on board discussion earlier this evening, it sounded like several board members wanted to discuss a line item in the budget as it relates to the Superior Town Center public improvement expense verification expense. And currently, the town budget, we have $25,000 to hire a third party to verify the public improvement expenses, which then will be the basis for reimbursement for those particular items. So that is staff's presentation on background, and we're welcome to discuss or answer any questions you may have.
I just want to say thank you for accelerating, for hearing us, from our last meeting and putting the parcel next to El Dorado K through 8 on the fast track.
So my comments are that I agree with hiring the additional town staff. I'm opposed to dropping below 75% in our budget until we have a better idea of what's happening in the town center. And for $10,000, I think that we're good, generates a whole bunch of goodwill with our neighbor. And I'm happy to discuss this some more. I'm personally happy to have the arrangement that we had with the developer before, where they would pick up the tab for the third-party evaluation. So, Trustee Skomats.
So on the fireworks thing, I wondered if we had talked to Louisville and whether they were happy, but also I've been given to understand it's actually not the town that pays for the fireworks themselves, but rather it's their chamber.
It's in their budget, so.
Yeah,
but,
protection, police and that sort of thing is, but not the fireworks themselves, from my understanding.
That wasn't my understanding, but I'll verify that.
So,
I spoke to the city manager, and he didn't.
If it is as I've heard, the chamber that pays for it, I don't know how the chamber would feel about, us interloping, and it's fine. If the town is all we have to worry about, that's great. But if it's not the town, I hate us to step in and then, be a bull in a china shop or something, So.
I'd like to pipe in on this $10,000 item. I don't support it. I just don't see any reason for us to give Louisville money for that.
I agree with you, Joe.
It's like a gift. They're doing it, we happen to be able to see it.
Okay, let's just come out.
And although I don't mean my comments to come across as negative, because I strongly support it, so. I just don't want us to step on toes.
Let's wrap this one up.
I opposed it last time too, so I'm kind of glad to hear some people that are also here that are supporting me, not supporting. So.
I don't support 10,000 for their fireworks when they're going to do it anyway, and half the time I like Broomfields and I like Boulders and Denver, and not about to.
The only way I would support that is if we alternate years. If they have 1 year in Superior, 1 year in Louisville.
We're a long way from that.
We are a long way. In other words, it's premature, and I had said that the last time.
Right, it's premature.
For me, I see it as minimal cost to start something that we will take advantage of when the town center is done.
How about when we?
And I think we can
have it over, unless we want to do them on our own when the town center is built out, but.
Something tells me that they'll take the 10 grand when we have the town center.
Well, either way.
They'll take it then,
I believe that there is not a majority support for that, even though I think I think it is a shame, because I think that there's nothing that you can. I hate being a free rider. This might be the pound-wise, penny-foolish approach, but.
To what? What is the downside? They didn't.
Goodwill. Right, which is even better. So generating goodwill with a partner that you do a lot of work with,
it's worth
I think
more
we
than
are,
$10,000.
but I think we are generating goodwill. We're
And
having
we've got
good
a
meetings with
ton of
them.
things
I'd
in the
rather
hopper.
make a
Okay, so either way.
$10,000 donation
Made my
to the
comment.
library is my
It's not
feeling on
happening.
that if we've got
Move
something.
on.
Move on.
And I feel bad because I feel like we know a lot of our residents go over there and watch it, and it seems to me that it's appropriate to pay our fair share. And I don't like the attitude that we've taken where we fund a lot of things out of sales tax thinking, all the people that shop here will pay for it, we don't have to pay for it. And I feel like we should pay more of our share. To me, contributing that bit
I just don't
is
agree.
appropriate.
So my thoughts are when the town center is built and we can have an alternate year, that's when we contribute. If that's 5 years from now,
Bingo.
then I
I feel
feel
the
like
same
we've
way.
saved $50,000 that we're donating to their, so fireworks. I think it has to be equitable.
Trustee Hanson?
So my thought, I think I said this last time, if this was a $50,000 expense, then I would be opposed to it.
It will be after 5 years.
But this year is a $10,000 expense, and I agree with the mayor that it's a goodwill gesture, and I think that it's a good thing. I haven't always been real supportive of working closely with Louisville on some things. I think that the meetings have been somewhat contentious at times, but I think this is a good idea that we are starting to work with them. And it's a
becoming less
minimal
contentious,
expense.
But I don't think we have to pay for it.
Don't get me wrong, I've always been in support of working with Louisville, doing joint projects, supported them consistently, but just to give them money is, just doesn't, I mean, that's $10,000 our residents.
Right.
The point is, we host some of our events, for example, the Morgul, which is a significant chunk of change, well in excess of $25,000 out of our budget. They can benefit from that by coming to our town. We benefit from their things by going to their town. If this were during the recession, and they came to us and said, would you help us with half the cost so we can put it on rather than canceling it, which is what I believe they did, then I think that's a whole different case of economics. But right now, I'm not in favor. It sounds like the majority is not.
What if the town manager went back to Louisville and with regard to next year's Morgul Classic, he said, hey, is there a way that we can partner together on this? And would you be willing to reciprocate?
And what do you think the answer would be, honestly?
I have no idea, but if we say, no, we're not going to give you $10,000 for the fireworks, I think the chances of it happening, a partnership there, would be less. But if we do it, I think there's an opportunity.
I don't agree with it.
Again, it's $10,000, it's really not a big chunk of money
I think there are
to
plenty
try and reach out.
of initiatives that we are planning on doing, that we have in the hopper with Louisville, that will be very beneficial to our residents.
The
that we're
wastewater
gonna
and the
be
waste
paying money
treatment
for.
stuff, then that's huge,
Or a new event that we haven't yet thought of. On
Yeah, I
the,
don't want to share the Morgul.
On the
that?
thing
I don't wanna
about
share
hiring the third-party engineer, I'm not comfortable with that at this point. I would like to see us review the language in the agreement, because we discussed it ad nauseum. I was the one who asked all the questions, and the assurances were made to me that, the response was made to those questions. You have nothing to worry about. This will be all audited and whatever. So I don't understand why we're now throwing 25 at it.
Is it reimbursable by the developer?
So staff is comfortable with the third-party engineer that we've selected, and it's being funded by the developer.
Oh, it is?
We are completely comfortable with the
That it
company
will
that
be
was selected.
independent.
Yes.
That he will be independent
The
despite the
reason we
check.
put money in the budget was out of discussions
Right.
among the
Remember.
board that you
Right.
weren't comfortable with the developer paying the third-party engineer.
Actually, I think the issue was that it appeared that they picked the third-party engineer, and they are working for them.
We interviewed
And they pay
3
their bill.
companies and selected this company.
Did you select it?
Who selected it?
Paul, and myself, and Alex.
And so who do they report to?
They report to us, and then as well, they'll report to Branch Capital.
And that's the best.
I'd like to give it a year, and then you
I agree.
guys get back with us and say, it's working, it's not working.
Yeah.
Because any sense that this is compromised, even after 3 months or something, we need to know.
And I don't know if this is any solace, but I'll try to draw an analogy back to a similar arrangement as it relates to the public infrastructure improvements in the marketplace. Under that particular scenario, the public improvements were built, roughly $21 million in public improvements. And those expenses at that time, they had no third-party review. Staff reviewed those at that point in time. And we felt that process would work. Now what we're talking about with involvement in third-party engineers, one additional level of review. So staff does feel very, very comfortable, and we can certainly report back to you how that process works.
I think that's a good workaround.
Okay, so clarity on that one. Last one is the acceleration of the park.
I guess I support a park. I don't know what the park is and how much it's going to cost. And so I don't know whether it makes sense to accelerate $2 million. And I guess we can't put this off till we know what we're doing. And
Joe, did you watch the last meeting?
I did.
You saw the discussion that we had?
I did see the discussion, and, I've heard anything from up to $4 million, and that's a big decision. I mean, I've got to know what the park is.
So the analogy was, Town 9, basically, that it wasn't built overnight. It took several years to build it, but we had to get it started, and that was the promise that we gave to the citizens of original towns. I think south of Colton, it's needed, and, you and I are fortunate, we live close to the Purple Park, it's great, we have lots of parks around, but if I lived on the other side, I would want that park to be developed. So, that was the idea of moving it, instead of 2018 or 2019, moving it a little sooner.
The Town 9 went several years at $100,000 a year from the Conservation Trust Fund. It frankly got accelerated because that was not developing a park that had any kind of
Cohesiveness?
yeah, exactly, that's the word I was looking for. And so we developed a plan and then moved forward. That was after several years, though. I feel like to know whether I want to accelerate this or even to go further in the hole, I'd have to know what it is we're doing and how much we're committing.
So,
and I don't know that.
Yeah, on October 13th, I believe I have scheduled during the work session for the preferred concept for the park to be presented to the board. I believe that's when I have it scheduled.
What are we doing on the budget tonight?
This is
your preliminary approval.
Okay.
But
If we can solve these policy issues, would be great.
Finalize it for adoption on the 13th.
And Mayor Pro Tem, I don't know if this provides any clarity for your particular concern, but again, how the budget is currently formulated is a design component next year of $200,000, which will hopefully do some level of articulation as it relates to the level of the park and not be constructed then until 2015, or 2016, excuse me. So there may be some time in there for some of those concerns to be addressed.
So then are we also discussing perhaps putting off as a trade-off the building that,
It's one of the options we listed, yeah.
or what other options?
Building what?
So,
There was in the budget.
So the
Public Works.
Parks and
Public
Works
Works.
Maintenance Facility, that was one of the options. We could push that out, could delay until there's a voter-approved tax. And then the third one that Paul presented, which is in the budget, is the general fund reserve drops below the reserve policy that the board currently has in place. And is replenished by 2019 to above reserve.
So,
But that's assuming that nothing else goes wrong.
yeah, I mean, from my perspective, until we have a better idea about the build-out of the town center and we know how buildings are going to be backfilled in the marketplace and we have Windy Gap all taken care of, dropping below 75% is a dangerous precedent that I don't think that we should be crossing right now.
Did the purchase of Richmond come out of the same general fund account?
It did, so factored in, and that's there was a lot of narrative there, but that was noted in your narrative about, yes, the purchase of Richmond
I
came out.
have to say, I think it needed to have been presented as, that impact
This
never
affects.
was really understood, by me at least, until I read this, and I thought that's the same fund that 1.2 came out of. And I would have liked to have known that at that time.
In
Right.
addition, though, there's, in the budget, it's the 700,000 from the sale of the 2 lots in the town center
Yeah.
that the board hasn't
But
approved yet, but.
frankly, in sets of priorities and promises made to this community, what to do with this parcel would have reigned supreme in my mind over the Richmond parcel in that decision-making, and I wish I would have had some of this information at the time of that decision. But not having, that's past history, it can't be changed. Putting this park out in the budget till 2019 literally means that everybody on this board, no matter when they were elected, Chris and I are the latest elected ones, will be totally off the board before this thing even breaks dirt.
That was the idea about accelerating it.
Meaning that if we are reelected this year, we're off in November of 2018, right, before this project would even break dirt. It also is 20 years into the life of that subdivision, Plat 2, and 20 years into the promises made that there would be a major park there for every X number of homes. So we've got promises to honor. I'm unsettled by this 53%. I'm also eager to hear how much this park's really going to cost. I've heard lots of numbers, and I'm not willing to abide by any of them because frankly, we're in the driver's seat on that. We can get a $4 million proposal or $3 million or $2 million and say, no, not at this time. At this time, we're going to grade the land, we're going to put in grass, we're going to put in a few amenities, et cetera, and we'll, I think, avoid the mistakes of founders, but nowhere go near these numbers. So until that October 13th presentation, I'm not willing to make this policy decision. On that October 13th presentation, we'll have much more information, and at that point, can offer more. But right now, I think we're being put in a
I agree.
sort of false voting thing. So I would like to delay this one.
So Matt, if we have this presentation in the work session at our next meeting, and then we still have to vote on the budget, right, that night in our regular meeting? If we choose, can we add it at that point?
Well,
or is that?
We purposely scheduled for the 13th so that if you needed another meeting, you have the 27th.
Okay, so then let's postpone for
completely
right now. Yeah, then, okay.
I wouldn't just postpone, I would still look into other options. I mean, if Sandy, what I'm hearing her say is that this board is going to be off in 2018, and we won't have had a chance to vote on this, and it potentially could fall through. But if there's opportunities that we start the design late 2015, going into
Right.
2016, we start the grading, maybe plant some grass, and then in 2017, we can do something else. And that kind of goes back to what Deborah was saying last time.
Exactly.
Can we just put 100,000 towards it each year? I think that's a little low, but I
Whatever
think
the
somewhere in
number.
between works. But this did scare me when I saw 53%.
Right.
And,
It is
I'm-
unsettling.
I'm not for it the way it is now, but perhaps
And
there's a way to
frankly, I
change
would
it.
never have voted for the Richmond parcel if I had known the full impact on everything else of that.
Sorry, Lisa, I wanted to.
Trustee Skumatz.
Right here. I didn't vote for it.
So
There you have it.
yeah, I can't support the.
That worked for you real well.
Okay, one
I
second.
can sleep well tonight.
Okay. Trustee Skumatz has the floor.
I can't support the change that leads us to 53%. But in all fairness, a citizen did come up and give us mention that we were pulling money out of that particular fund and some of the implications, so.
No, I heard the same comment, but it was only after the decision was made.
No.
Oh, that's when I heard it.
I don't recall that saying.
we need to make a
So,
motion to
well,
pass it, or-
what I would add.
I'm sorry, I was hoping that Brent, the chairman of ProStac, was there, because didn't ProStac discuss this Wednesday evening? Sandy?
Sandy Hammerly, 2855 Rock Creek Circle, number 214. We did discuss this. I mean, basically, we said $1 million is not really going to do this part for us. So, I'm not really prepared to comment on this, but we did talk about the fact that, I mean, to be serious, $100,000 isn't going to touch this park. We're regretful that you obviously haven't seen the park. We've had the plan in place for many, many, many weeks. So we understand and appreciate your frustration, but the park is millions of dollars. And we hope you'll see it as soon as you possibly can. But, other than that, I'm not really prepared to comment, and I don't want to speak for the committee.
So it sounds like we'll delay this to discuss it at the next meeting. So once again, so from just a political perspective, that I think it might be best to keep this park in a package that would include other recreational amenities, because it makes the likelihood of any of those ballot questions passing much higher. So just food for thought.
Makes sense to me.
So the only thing really to the three items is the extra.
So what I heard was,
No.
out of
There's nothing.
those items, no fireworks contribution, no inclusion of the $25,000 for the third-party engineer, inclusion of the additional staff member, and then a delay on this one item.
Correct.
I think that's right.
The delay being, we're going to wait till after the 13th, or wait till the 13th?
We'll have a discussion on the 13th, because we'll need to finalize the budget for adoption for October 27th.
But is staff going to look into other options of phasing?
We'll
Grading
take
and
a look and see
seating and all
what we
that.
can come up with, yes. I mean, I think everybody on the board isn't comfortable with dropping below the 75%, is what I'm hearing.
Yes.
So we have
But
to
there
see
is-
if there's other options we can do.
There's options to make it something,
Yeah, yeah.
something different than
What it is.
vacant, barren land.
Yep.
I don't understand how it's.
And, maybe the building, is delayed a little, so that, not fully delayed, but somehow it all works out that, there is some start on this park, and then the building, takes a little bit of a backseat. There must be a happy medium, basically, what I'm
For
saying.
example, how much is Remington paying towards parks in lieu?
I don't remember off the top of my head.
So, since south of Colton, 1,100 households.
Well, let me have an answer, actually. Wait,
Contributed
this
for
is-
20 years to property tax and landscape fees up here, that can go south,
Well, yeah, we'll have to.
And there's GOCO grants and a whole
Discussion.
bunch of
Yeah,
different
yeah.
things, so.
Did you have an answer, Paul?
The answer to that is $3,000 a home.
Per home. And how many homes?
50-something.
So what's the math on that? 1.5 million?
Yeah.
Oh,
That's
no, no, no.
146,000.
No, not quite.
That's
One less
150.
zero, I think.
Too many zeros.
It's one less zero.
That's
Gosh,
150,000.
I'm wishful thinking, aren't I?
Oh, my goodness.
So, all right, so we needed an approval of the initial presentation of the budget as
Yeah.
presented, with the understanding that the policy issue regarding acceleration of the school site property will be discussed at the next regularly scheduled meeting.
So can we make a motion?
And then
or-
perhaps additionally, Mayor, setting the public hearing then for, instead of October 13th, to October 27th.
Okay. So with that, Trustee Gurgurs?
I'd like to make a motion, Town of Superior ordinance number O.
We're not actually, no ordinance, just, yeah.
Is this preliminary?
First reading.
No number at this point.
Okay. An ordinance of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior appropriating sums of money to the various funds and spending agencies in the amounts and for the purposes as set forth below for the Town of Superior, Colorado for the 2015 budget year.
And set it in public hearing for October 27th.
Indeed.
Okay, motion by Trustee Gurgurs, second by Trustee Skusurleson. So, Skumats? All in favor? Unanimous, thank you very much. That brings us back to what was 12. So if I have this correct, Pro Stack, sorry, I have to go back to that page, so.
Oh, yeah, that's like...
One, while I'm trying to find the page, I thank everybody who applied, and the other information is that everybody received a vote, and they were all close. So with that, though, I believe, if I have this correct, Pro Stack has one vacancy, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's correct.
And the vote would show that Corey Ochsner received the most votes and should be appointed. That for Planning Commission,
2 vacancies.
2 vacancies, and Jerry Malia and, Mark Lasis were supported. And that RCAC, there's 2 vacancies, and that Joe Keenan received the most, and then we had a tie, so we need between Kimberly Owens and Leslie Snell, we need everybody to vote to pick, and that's why you got the white pieces of paper.
So what were the numbers for the RCAC? Because it looked like Joe Keenan won.
Yeah, he won.
He
But
won.
there's 2 spots.
There's 2 vacancies.
Fine. Gotcha. Okay.
So, thank you. So Phyllis, I got that correct today? Okay, good. Just having to go back.
Just so that everyone knows, there was, somebody only voted for 1 on RCAP. It should have been 2. That's why we're doing this.
Somebody messed up.
I was going to say the math, you're 7 divided
Why are
by
y'all laughing at me?
2.5.
Somebody messed up. Who
I
did?
didn't mess up.
So we have a Kimberly, a Leslie,
I can't even
Kimberly
remember.
and Leslie, that's it.
Kimberly, Kimberly.
Kimberly wants one more.
Wait, I didn't fill mine out yet. Wait, how did we get this? Nobody said
Turn
vote.
All right, vote.
No one said vote yet.
Okay, hold your... It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't
You've been-
matter.
Oh.
Kimberly got enough votes.
Well, wait a minute.
Wait a minute.
Wait a minute.
We may have had the staff. We have a Kimberly Snell, and their name's Kimberly Owens.
That's really funny. That was not me.
It wasn't me either.
Not me.
Who did that? Come on, it
That was me.
Kimberly is.
I think Chris
So
is
you wanna
on
vote
paper,
again,
I'm
or
gonna
you-
vote for it. You voted for both of them.
You did.
Was it all tied up here?
1, 2, 3, 4 for Kimberly,
right.
Okay.
and 2 for Leslie.
See what this late meeting...
It doesn't matter.
Okay, there we go. So, all right, who would like to, Trustee Hanson, since you did so well with that, would you want to read the resolutions?
Oh, all of them?
All of them?
You're the man.
All 3.
That's your
In fact, you could
punishment. for it.
practice by doing the student one, too.
All right, I got them right here. Hold on.
Unless somebody else has them.
I got one.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion for the Town of Superior Resolution Number R dash, this is the...
50 is for pro staff.
Okay, R-50, Series 2014, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior, Colorado, appointing a member to the Parks, Recreation, Open Space, and Trails Advisory Committee. And that shall be
Corey Oxner.
Corey Ochsner.
Is it Oxner or Oxner?
Ochsner.
All right. All in-
Okay. Motion, is there a second? Trustee Gurgurus, all in favor? Unanimous, thank you very much.
I can do the next one?
Sure.
Unless Chris has it?
Well, the Youth Advisory Committee, we're not doing that.
Not
No.
doing that, no.
But you can practice.
Because you can't.
I'll practice, I'll
There
go
you
up.
go.
All right, Trustee
Go ahead.
Gurgurus.
Yes, there you
I'd
go.
like to make a motion for Town of Superior Resolution Number R-51,
51.
Series 2014, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior, Colorado, appointing members to the Recycling and Conservation Advisory Committee.
Those members are Joe, Keenan, and
Kimberly Snell.
Kimberly Owens.
Kimberly Owens.
Okay. There's a motion, second by trustee Schoonmath, all in favor, unanimous, thank you very much.
I'm sorry.
Youth we're not doing, you said?
And we're-
And there's one more.
Planning Commission?
Planning Commission.
Yep, I got one.
And we are
Who seconded?
notifying all of the,
Our cat guide
okay,
seconded.
there.
Right, thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Do we know
Planning
when they're going to
Commission?
start meeting?
Okay. I'd like to make a motion on Town Superior Resolution number R-40.
51.
51?
52, sorry.
Okay, 52. The resolution of the Board of Trustees of Town Superior appointing members to the Planning Commission, Jerry Malia and
Mark Lasis.
Mark Lasis.
Motion, second by trustee Sorelli, discussion, all in favor, unanimous, thank you very much. So, town staff will communicate with all our applicants, including the youth advisory, the folks at youth services, and let them know, and give them our congratulations and thanks to everybody. With that, that brings us to the end of our meeting. Is there anything else to come before the board this evening? Seeing none, meeting adjourned. See you in 3 weeks.
Who are the three people